event together, let me extend to you a very exciting welcome. We are excited to present to you the Trade Board's strategy to facilitate the boosting of exports. We are excited to present to you our findings from the Step Up Export project. We're excited to give and share with you our knowledge on the trade agreements and the qualifying criteria that will enable exporters and potential exporters to boost the Jamaican economy and, as a result, raise our GDP through exports. I am not sure if you or many of you have been keeping abreast with the pronouncements being made by Minister Aubin Hill in the different events that he has been afforded a mouthpiece. In short, Minister Hill's focus is pushing exports, and not just within our region. So it is not enough for you to say that I'm already exporting to Trinidad or Barbados or Guyana. But Minister Hill's push is that if we truly want to grow and we truly want to capitalize and grow our economy, that we need to look outside of the over 80 million population in the region and look to trade agreements to push our exports. In short, we need to look to other markets. Today's seminar will help you with this. We will give you some ideas. We will be speaking about benefits that can be had with trading with Cuba, who provides a market access to their population of approximately 11.26 million persons, trading with the Dominican Republic, who also has a very big market access to their population of over 11 million persons. And if Spanish is not your thing, then there are other preferential agreements or arrangements that you may wish to consider. There's trading with the UK, there's trading with Japan, there's trading with New Zealand, Germany, just to name a few. I mean, even for those of you that are avid footballers, even Croatia, not only good for football, but we also have agreements in place that we can trade with Croatia. And so we're excited to hear and share with you how to negotiate the challenges of export. And so I'm asking, if there's only one dege thing that you take away from this seminar, is that the knowledge shared on exports today should instill in your minds to get some ideas as to which countries, which markets you would like to access as a potential exporter. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I'm not sure how many of you have an agenda, and so the next, just to do some housekeeping matters, we're a bit delayed with our chairman, and so we will delay our opening remarks until he gets here. But just to say that on items 2, which is a situation analysis, and the findings, after those 2 items, we will take a short 10 minutes question and answer, and then we will move on to the overview of the trade agreements. I will not be calling the presentators up to present. You will know when it is your turn, so I'm just expecting for you to come to the mic because 15 minutes is a short time to present and we don't have much time. And so we will move to Dr. Major Hugh Blake to present on the situation analysis and the 4E strategy.
Thank you very much, Kaniko. Could have waited 2 seconds to have my presentations up. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Over the next 25 minutes or so, I will be presenting to you the strategies that the Trade Board is pursuing to support the growth of exports in Jamaica. The strategies that I will give you is a broad overview because time does not permit to go into significant details. One of the things that I have to spend a minute or two on is to share with you a little bit about the Trade Board, because since we have been promoting this seminar, a lot of persons have been coming up to me and saying, what is the Trade Board all about? Could you explain to me? So if Sorry, I think there is something going on with the slides here. Just a minute, please. So, Carl. All right. Okay, I think there's a little delay. When I press this thing, it takes a while before it moves, or it's not moving at all. Okay, all right. So I thought I would share with you what our mission statement is, because it adequately captures what the Trade Board is all about. Our mission is to efficiently support Jamaica's economic development by contributing to an enabling ecosystem for trade growth and development, increase local and foreign investment, and sustain job creation through the provisions of relevant trade-related information, the issuance and regulation of trade license and certification. And of course, we do this consistent with the government's trade policy and agreement. To some, this presentation may seem a bit lopsided because it does not give a true or accurate picture of all the services provided by the Trade Board. But that's deliberate, because this morning we are focusing primarily on exports. So the presentation will be skewed in that way. But no doubt you will agree that for Jamaica's economy to grow, we must earn fundamentally new monies from outside our shores. This can only be done through greater exports of Jamaica's goods and services. That's the only way, the only significant way that we can grow our economy. From a company's perspective, exports can lead to increase in revenues from sales, reduce unit cost of production through greater spreading of overheads, because you're clearly dealing with a greater level of demand, can help companies to gain new knowledge, experience, and insights. Spot opportunities. When you're outside there in the world doing business, it's very likely that you will spot other opportunities and even innovative ideas, new products, etc. And importantly, you can spread your business risk by diversifying into multiple markets. Right. So at the Trade Board, we develop what we describe as our 4E strategy for supporting the growth of exports. It includes, oh Lord, I don't know what's happening with this thing. I'm pressing 1 and it's not happening. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. It's not moving. Oh? Will you do the clicking, the changing for me? Okay, some slides you have to click several times before it goes. Okay, so the first E there would be educate, enable, expedite, and evaluate. Very simple 4E strategy. Regarding educate, one of our mandates is to be the chief repository and disseminator of trade-related information. This provides us with a huge opportunity to educate. The Jamaica Trade Information Portal, JTIP, is one of the primary tools through which the Trade Board Limited provides information and education to traders via the internet. It provides a one-stop portal through which businesses wishing to engage in cross-border trade involving Jamaica can obtain all the relevant information they need. And this is in fulfillment of the World Trade Organization's Trade Facilitation Agreement, Article 1. Sorry about that. Right. The JTIP includes information on trade laws, regulations, standard procedures, guidelines, tariff fees, taxes, and the details of trade agreements, etc. And it is an evolving website, or portal, because we are constantly upgrading and including new information. The dynamic trade environment in which we operate requires us to innovate and to be strategic in the way in which we obtain, interpret, and disseminate data or information. JTIP, therefore, needs to be expansive and accessible. Plans are in place to expand the reach and scope of JTIP through the presentation of its content in both Spanish and French, and this is in addition to English. Importantly, plans are well advanced to include trade in services, which is actually quite a big aspect of the trade that we do. Through social media and other conventional forms of advertising, we promote and encourage traders to visit JTIP. Now, we are the designated government's authority to certify products which complies with the rules of origin criteria on the 9 preferential trade agreements. This means that we have to, one, we have to analyze products to ensure conformance to prescribed criteria of the agreements. We have to issue a certificate of origin that permits the qualifying products to be granted preferential treatment. That's actually 2, issuing a certificate of origin that permits the qualifying products to be granted preferential treatment. Now, I want to tell you that although there are 9 agreements for which the Trade Board has management responsibility, at least 5 of these agreements are significantly underutilized. Some of these agreements were operationalized from as far back as 20 years ago. And yet, exports under these agreements can only be described as anemic, of course, for want of a better word. For example, CARICOM Venezuela Trade and Investment Agreement entered January 1993 with a market size of 28 million. No certificate of origin has been issued in the last 7 years. CARICOM Colombia Trade and Economic Technical Cooperation Agreement entered into on the 1st of January 1995. Market size, 51 million. Only 10 certificates of origin have been issued over the past 7 years. CARICOM Dominica Republic. This is a free trade agreement. Entered in on the 1st of December 2001 with a market size of 11 million. Only 2 Jamaican companies currently export under that agreement. Although in the 7 years, when you check the records, you will actually see 82 certificates of origin. The majority is for one company, one product. And sadly, that is no longer considered, that product is no longer considered a qualifying product. CARICOM Cuba, Trade and Economic Cooperation Agreement, entered in on the 5th of July 2000. Market size 11 million. Only 48 certificates of origin issued in 7 years. So we are looking at combined a market size of approximately 100 million with less than 180 certificates of origin. And if you remove the certificate of origin issued to the company or to the product that has been disqualified, we really would be looking at 100 million market, the markets have 100 million with just 100 or so certificates of origin. Well, if that is not anemic, I really don't know what is. In recognition of the situation, could you just go back to the first slide, please? Yes, just keep it right there, and I will signal to you when to change it. In recognition of the situation, the Trade Board has developed a step-up export trade agreement campaign to improve existing and potential exporters' knowledge about the benefits of the 9 trade agreements comprising bilateral, regional, multilateral agreements for which the Trade Board Limited has management responsibilities. This initiative includes sending expert teams into the fields to interact directly with potential and existing exporters, to explain the details of the agreement and to offer hand-holding services where necessary. To date, we have visited over 100 companies. And really, when I say to date, I mean last financial year. Over 100 companies. And the feedbacks have been really insightful and encouraging. Of significant importance is the opportunity this gives us to interact directly with the usually manufacturers or exporters, to get from them firsthand what are some of the obstacles that they face, and help them as best as possible to understand how best to navigate these obstacles. So what we have developed is a fairly sharp sense of the needs of these exporters. What we actually do is we have developed an instrument or a questionnaire that we administer when we go on these field exercises, and that gives us the opportunity to capture very clearly, consistently, information. The findings will be presented by our next presenter if the chairman is not here to give his presentation. Right. The other thing is that we are establishing or moving with alacrity to establish an export academy to build our capacity for export. This will empower our exporters with even greater decision-making information and trading know-how. Exporters complete an online questionnaire that is analyzed by standard programming, to identify knowledge gaps. That information is used to customize a training program for that particular entity or individual. Information for closing knowledge gap will be automatically sent to that company or individual. Right? and then there will be a number of quizzes and so on. What I'm giving you is just really the very basic. So the Export Academy is no big mystery. It's not like you have to matriculate to get into a university or anything like that. What it really is that we have developed an instrument where we capture from the potential exporter what exactly they want to do. Based on how they fill out that questionnaires, we know where the critical knowledge gap is. Right? And what we do, we send that information to them automatically. Right? And then we have a number of quizzes and so on and follow-ups that take place. The Export Academy will reduce the uncertainty about how to export and give businesses the tools and confidence to seek out export opportunities globally. The Academy will be a free online service provided by the government of Jamaica through the Trade Board Limited. Market intelligence. The Trade Board is also engaged in a project to provide market intelligence and trade compliance information for markets around the world. Jamaican businesses who register with the Trade Board Limited will be able to go online and identify the best target markets for their products and services, access doing business guides, collect relevant market information about any country or industry of interest. Will also help to find new opportunities worldwide, help to check compliance, duties, etc., etc. Market intelligence, APIs, and widgets would be accessible through our revamped website and would provide information and guide for doing business with the rest of the world, which would be complementary to Jamaica Trade Information Portal that provides mainly domestic regulatory information. This service will be available by the end of July. Okay, so we move to the top right-hand quadrant, number 2. This is where we will help exporters to convert the knowledge gained in one into value. We will guide conformance to the qualifying criteria of the respective trade agreements. We will handhold exporters and guide them through the various export processes. We'll provide information and contact details of likely interested parties, market experts, and relevant trade organizations in the importing country. We'll work with our counterparts in the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce to resolve export issues confronted. We'll also provide trading tools such as duty calculators, currency converters, and language translators. Change. The bottom right-hand quadrant is where we will expedite. The Trade Board fully recognizes the need to keep up with the pace of transactions through efficiency in our processes and with the use of up-to-date technology. To this end, we have established key performance indicators that are related to the time we take to do business. We recognize that as business people, time is critical. You have commitments to your customers, and you have to deliver on time. I had a very interesting discussion with a Jamaican business, I won't call the name, that has successfully navigated the entire process and is now producing hardware and selling to Lowe's and Home Depot, etc., etc. And he's doing very well. Right? And what he told me is that a critical part of his success is that he made his business extremely reliable. Reliability is everything when you're dealing with overseas market. What we at the Trade Board want to do is to make sure that we operate in such a way that we do proper turnaround times, right? All the commitments that we make in our service agreement, we work assiduously to make sure that we deliver the service within that time, because we know how important that is. We set, for example, we set as our KPI, export license. We commit that within 1 working day or 8 hours, you will get your export license. Certificate of origin, also within the 8-hour period. Letters of origin, 8-hour period, etc., etc. And these commitments are made public, so our exporter knows what to expect in terms of turnaround time, and they can plan their business accordingly. The KPIs, these KPIs are significantly better than what we had in the past. In the past, we had a 73% efficiency index. We are now operating at 95%, simply because we have decided that those things that we have control over, we are setting them as our key performance indicators. One of the recent reforms to enhance export is the electronic certificate of origin. Really, it came out of a collaborative effort between the Jamaica Customs Agency and the Trade Board. It gives faster processing time. It gives the ability to generate real-time reports, greater protection of the integrity of the certificates of origin issued by Jamaica, and improve the ease of doing business. Generally improves the ease of doing business. This is fully implemented, ratified by CARICOM, and is now in place. And I believe all our exporters are very pleased at the speed at which they are now able to get these certificates of origin done and their transactions. We have developed and introduced a digital version of the product analysis form, which has significantly sped up the process of product analysis, application, and assessment for compliance with the criteria of the respective agreements. Work is complete, and we are now in the implementation phase. And I want to just say that the digitalization that I mentioned here is just part of a wider plan that we have. In fact, it's a process that we are going through, and we're almost complete, where we are trying to digitalize all our processes, because we realize that is the way to get reliability and speed. And, to use technology coming to the first world, So it's just part of a process. We're doing that even our inventory management, because we recognize, that with the government's push to increase exports, services that we offer, like at the Trade Board, has to be efficient to handle what we expect to be increased volumes of business. So we are also preparing ourselves to handle that. I also want to point out that we are training our field officers in the principles of production management to improve their ability to do product analysis. Right? And I think this is very important, so that they understand exactly what they see when they go into the production facilities. I know it can be quite daunting when you go into a production facility, you see machines and all that going click, clink, clink. But we want, because we have to certify what the inputs are, we must at least understand the basics of production management, how materials are inputted and accounted for, and so on. And the final quadrant, the trade board we recognize that the trade board have to go through a process of continuous evaluation and have to stay operationally efficient so that we add value to the thrust of government towards export. Today's trade is rapidly evolving, and both the methods of delivery of service, products, and products are rapidly changing. The methods of deliveries are changing. The impact of the pandemic, for example, created a lot of problems with logistics and so on, and the conflict in the Ukraine. So things does not stay the same, and we recognize that we have to be flexible enough, agile enough to respond to those situations, to the change in context in which we are asking our exporters to do business. Finally, I'd like to say that we're also making sure that we deepen our collaborations with other BRAs. And the idea here is that we collaborate, work together, so that we can smooth the path for export and resolve issues that emerge as quickly as possible. So, we're doing all of this because we have a vision that by 2030, the Trade Board Limited will be recognized as a national focal point for trade facilitation, by being Jamaica's primary source of trade information and the chief administrator of relevant trade policies, regulations, and agreements, arrangements. That is how we see ourselves in the future. And we are going to do this by one, we're going to evaluate, enable, expedite, and evaluate. I want you to note a couple of points. One is that the world is open for business, and we must recognize that. Two is that approximately 100% of the world's consumers are outside of Jamaica. 100%. Our number is probably 0.0000000 something, right? So we're still looking at 100%. And that in 2021, global export of just products alone, not services, amounted to US $28 trillion. The question is, how much are we going for? How much of this are we going for? There will be a question and answer session, I believe, shortly. So thank you very much.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Carl Morgan. I'm the Director of Information Systems and Records Management at the Trade Board, and I will be presenting the findings from the Step Up Export project, which took place during the last financial year. Gentlemen, can you get my presentation up, please? Thank you. Okay, step up exports with trade agreements. Dr. Blake mentioned that the project during his presentation. Now, the initiative was launched May 9th last year, and the primary objectives were to promote the benefits of the 9 preferential trade agreements that the Trade Board is responsible for. We wanted to also increase awareness of the underutilized or inactive trade agreements. Dr. Blake indicated 5 of those in his presentation. The methodology that we chose for the project was directly engage the manufacturers and exporters through site visits. Now, the direct engagement of the manufacturers and exporters is key to the entire project. And in fact, as I go through the presentation, I will be making reference to that from time to time, because one of the outcomes of this project is to highlight the importance of directly engaging the trading community. We oftentimes plan these large, elaborate events, and we invite the manufacturers and exporters, and they may have an impact, but if we want to create change, we have to engage them directly. And that is certainly something that this project taught us. Now, TBL certifies exports on the line of 11 preferential trade agreements. The other 2 are under the purview of Jamaica Customs Agency. Now, and this was a background to why we engaged in the project. The low utilization of several of the agreements, as I mentioned before. But one of our Trade Board's strategic priorities is capacity building. We want to ensure that the exporting community have all the tools that they need for proper decision making, and so that they can carry out their business. Now, what are these 9 preferential trade agreements that we keep referring to? They are the revised Treaty of Chagaramas, CARICOM, and you'll see that the majority of our exports take place under that particular agreement. There's a Caribbean Basin Initiative, which covers exports to the US. There is the CARICOM Canada Trade Agreement, CARIBCAN for short. And then there is the Generalized System of Preference, GSP. And you may be wondering why I'm not going sequentially in some order, because I wanted to do all of these at the same time, because they all have one thing in common. Those are our 5 underutilized trade agreements. The CARICOM Venezuela, CARICOM Colombia, CARICOM Dominican Republic, and the CARICOM Cuba Trade Agreement. And those are the 5 significantly underutilized, are not being utilized at all, as Dr. Blake indicated in his presentation. And that is certainly one of the things that we wanted to address with this project. As you can see from the next slide, trade within CARICOM represents the largest volume that we do. The number of certificates issued annually averages about 3,000 certificates. But as you'll see there, there is no certificate issued for Venezuela, none for Colombia. At one point, DOMREP, we had exported, there were 49 certificates issued, but now, certainly in the last financial year, we are down to 1. As Dr. Blake indicated, the product that previously qualified, it turned out that didn't qualify, so that's another agreement that is not being utilized. We issued 2 certificates for Costa Rica recently, so they suggest that there's some uptick there that we might need to pay attention to. But by and large, these agreements are not being utilized. Okay, so what are the objectives of the project? We wanted to ensure that we had great utilization of the preferential trade agreements. And it was certainly clear, there are indications coming to us, but certainly confirmed by interacting with the public, that knowledge of the agreements was pretty limited, and that was something that we needed to address. So that's the key outcome that we wanted. We wanted to ensure that we get an increase in the utilization of the agreements. Main strategy, direct engagement, as I indicated before. The map shows the distribution of the companies that were visited, primarily within Kingston and St. Andrew, St. Catherine. The project, I should mention, is ongoing. We haven't quite gotten to St. Thomas, Portland, and Anvers yet, but this is not an exercise that we have started and we intend to stop, but we're going to continue to do that. So, what are the findings, which is the main reason I'm here? First of all, the 100% of the entities that we interact with lauded the initiative. They thought it was timely, the information was helpful, and they believe it will lead to greater export opportunities. Majority of export is to CARICOM. 73% of the companies visited are exporting to CARICOM. However, their products can in fact qualify for preferential treatment under other existing agreements. As I indicated earlier, there is in fact a knowledge deficit, and knowledge of the other trade agreements that are there is lacking. And so what this direct engagement did was to help to enlighten our exporters that there are other opportunities that they can in fact pursue. The next significant finding is that 43% of our companies indicated that they had challenges finding and accessing markets for their products. Dr. Blake mentioned, and this is certainly something that needs to be looked at. Dr. Blake indicated one of the things that the Trade Board is going to be doing, the launch of our market intelligence project, will help to fill that gap. And I'm sure the ministry will be undertaking some other initiatives as well that will help to fill that particular gap there. I already indicated that there's limited knowledge of the trade agreements, and some manufacturers are not aware of specific trade agreements. For example, Cuba, the one with Cuba, and CBI. This particular item is not an issue per se. We have manufacturers that do not export, but they do manufacture products for exporters. So they do play a critical role in the export process and in the Jamaican economy. But we can encourage some of those entities to also engage in the export process. The biggest issue by far is financial constraints. Now, Small and medium-sized exporters do not have enough capital to export to different overseas markets, and they limit their participation to one or two markets as a consequence of that. They further stated that although they may be interested in other markets, the cost of getting their products to market with limited resources, it's also affected by economy of scales and their inability to penetrate and compete with their larger competitors. The high cost of raw material as well is a problem that they indicated, and the high cost of energy. And so those are some of the factors that were cited under financial constraints. But one of the things that we also realized that the manufacturers are not necessarily aware of some of the incentives provided by the government. There are indications that some don't know of the existence of the Exim Bank, who I see represented here today. They're not aware of the productive input relief program and other initiatives that the government has in place that will in fact assist them with point number 6. Trade barriers. And this one comes up in almost any discussion of trade. So they have trade barriers, particularly the Spanish-speaking countries. For example, Law 173 in the DOMREP, which requires that the exporters sign these exclusive agreements with distributors in the Dominican Republic, and there are penalties if those contracts are ended. A deal killer in any circumstances. International supply chain disruption and logistic issues. Now, the business environment is still grappling with the effects of COVID, and that has been exacerbated by Mr. Putin's war. Now, this one is aimed directly at the government entities in this room. Disruption due to lack of coordination among the government entities. One of the complaints that the manufacturers have is that production flow is oftentimes interrupted due to multiple inspections and site visits from different government entities. So what they want from us is coordinated efforts whenever these activities are taking place. I know some effort has been made to do that, especially for inspections, but they are saying that more needs to be done. Communication. The exporters and manufacturers have indicated that information is not being disseminated when there are changes in policies and procedures, etc. And where these directly impact shipment, for example, it can create delays for them. And that is also a criticism that is aimed at the government, which we need to be mindful of. More needs to be done to communicate policy changes and so on. But I will go back to a point I made earlier, that there's a lot that is happening. However, the exporters, we believe that the exporters may be aware, but clearly they are not aware of some of the things and initiatives that the government is undertaking to help them. And the last one that they indicated, there's a request for more trade shows as a means of identifying and entering international markets. However, they indicated that sometimes the cost to participate in some of these initiatives when they do occur is oftentimes prohibitive, and so they are requesting assistance to help them in those circumstances. Summary of the findings. 43% of respondents indicated that they need assistance to find new markets. 5% indicated they wanted more trade shows and mission, which was the last point I just mentioned. 14% identified financial constraints preventing diversification. 7% indicated communication with government entities as an issue. And their supply chain issues as indicated earlier. And 59% indicated that capacity building is required. 100% of our respondents indicated, however, that the trade board needs to continue this initiative. They want us to continue to reach out to them. The direct engagement that we have started, they want us to continue that. And I would hasten to say that direct engagement from some other government entities would also be very beneficial to our exporters. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, for you physically present and for those online, are there any questions from the two presentations? You would have heard from Dr. Blake on the 4E strategy and the situational analysis in relation to that. And you would have heard from Carl on the findings from the Step Up Export with Trade Agreements project. Are there any questions? Sure. Mrs. Shirley? I don't think, hold for me. We do have mics. Just hold for me a minute. Gentlemen, if you could just come to the podium, please. Carl and Dr. Blake. Oh, you have a mic there. Okay, great.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
My question and...
Sorry, Mrs. Shirley, before you go into your question, can you just identify yourself and your organization?
Good morning. My name is Sharon May Shirley, and I'm the CEO of the Jamaica National Agency for Accreditation, JANAC.
Thank you.
So my question, and from that you will perhaps know that I'm heading in a particular direction. My question is, in your survey, did you ascertain if your potential exporters had challenges with conformity assessment procedures in the export markets?
No, we did not. Is it on? No, we did not. No, we did not ask that question specifically. But now that you've said it, I think it should be something that is included going forward, because we recognize how important that is. Perhaps we have some persons who were actually on the actual exports itself. Exercise itself. I don't know if any of them wish to speak to say whether this particular issue or request came up from any of the exporters.
Ms. Butler is looking for the mic.
Good morning. I'm Joan Butler, Director of Exports at the Trade Board. And so far, none of the exporters really went into that issue. I'll just make a note of it, and I'm going to include it in the questionnaire going forward.
Thanks very much for that. Very important.
Okay, we still have time for some more questions. Any questions? You may go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, good morning. My name is Dan White-Mattis. I'm from the Jamaica Biscuit Company. I'm the import-export coordinator for the company. Being one of the persons that used to be in the logistics department, I now sit on the commercial arm of things. But having heard of the development in terms of going digital, first thing that came to my mind was a joyful moment and then a what-if moment. So we're expediting the processes digitally, but the contingency plans, will it offer the same turnaround time?
I think whatever commitment we make in terms of our turnaround time, I tell you what, we are basically meeting those right now. In most of the situations where there are difficulties, it has to do most of the time with improper completion of the documents in terms of the application, And so we have to get back to the applicant and sort out an issue. But all properly completed applications, all are dealt with within the time that we specify. And so for some things, particularly export, where we are very keen to make sure that we don't miss a beat, I think Joan can share with you, our Director of Export, that we are hitting a 99% efficiency index with that.
Okay, on the point you just made about the documentation completion, can there, I don't know if there is already considerations given, maybe you can have an orientation process and guiding the relevant stakeholders in the completion of it, because that would eliminate those margin of errors going forward.
Yes, absolutely. We can do that, and one of the things I want to also point out to you, and this is why we keep, suggesting and trying to encourage persons to visit the tools we have at the Trade Board, like the Jamaica Trade Information Portal, because it gives a tremendous amount of information on the respective documents and so on, what is required, how to do it, and so on. And we're open to the traders. You call down to the Trade Board and you want something to be clarified, we do it expeditiously. So, but your suggestion can help, and we'll certainly look into that.
Let me just make an additional point on contingency to ensure that there is always continuity. We depend upon the Jamaica single window for trade for a lot of our processes now and our transactions, and I can guarantee you that there is adequate redundancies right across the island to ensure that that system, that there isn't any significant downtime with that system. There are some things that we don't have any control of, act of God, which could create some problems, but there is adequate redundancy for the system that exists of customs that we depend upon, that extends all the way to Montego Bay. So hopefully there will be no significant disruption in service if something goes wrong.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I also want to add a little point regarding that. And that, J-Swift is perhaps one of the largest IT project undertaken in Jamaica ever. Right? It is quite a huge undertaking, because if you imagine that all the government transactions are being onboarded to this platform, and all the agencies and so on have different ways of doing their various processes or transactions, and J-Swift have to capture all of this. And so, admittedly, there are teething pains, right? And we have been in constant contact with Jamaica Customs agencies. They are the ones who operate J-Swift to resolve issues as fast as they come up. But they have a team that is working on a lot of issues and steadily. And admittedly, there will be, and there are, issues that come up from time to time related just to the weight of what they have to accomplish. So I believe that in a short while, most of these issues will be sorted out, because there is a lot of effort put behind it. So a little bit of patience is required in a lot of instances.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Blake.
Hi, good morning. My name is Kimberly Roach. I am the Manager of Promotions and Outreach from the MSME division at MIC. And I have a question about the Export Academy. I mean, we see where MSMEs, need that capacity training. So I would like to hear a little bit more about that academy and how MSMEs can access that service.
Sure. Well, one of the things that we're doing is that we are doing a lot of stakeholder consultations. And we are in the process of the development of this particular academy. And so we'll certainly be consulting with the MSMEs organization and going through in detail what is it that they would like to see us include in the academy, particularly as it relates to exports. So there will be a significant amount of exchange between your organization and ourselves. And I believe it's a very important sector and one that needs to be nurtured. So a lot of effort will be placed there. I can't go into the specifics right now because we're still in the developmental stage and we're still talking. But rest assured that the concerns of the MSMEs or the things that are critical for them to know as far as related to exports will be included. All right? Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, is it burning, burning, burning?
Yes.
All right, we'll allow this last question, and then we will move on. And then for any other questions going forward, we do have another segment with question and answers. And I believe you're provided with a notepad. We're strategic, we're strategic in our doing. So we provided you with notepad and paper, so you can just make a note of it for the second section of question and answers. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Ricardo Durant here, JAMPRO. And I just wanted to find out, in terms of the survey, what was the sample size and the categories of exporters that were surveyed? When I say category, you could simply say whether they're food, non-food, that sort of thing.
Right. So the sample size was 100 businesses. Actually, we did 105, and we had skewing clearly to the manufacturing sector, right? Because we take the view literally that all manufacturers are potential exporters, and so that is the only bias I can think of, that we looked at companies that are actually manufacturing, producing products in Jamaica that we feel they stand a good chance of benefiting from one of the trade agreements that we operate. But we cut across a wide cross-section, both producers and manufacturers. We weren't, we weren't showing much bias in that regard. So it's really a good sample size, and it's very reflective of what's happening. We went to large companies as well as small companies, so it's a fairly reliable result.
In 2 minutes, Ms. Butler, can you just say perhaps like what industries you went to? What type of industries you went to answer?
Food, manufacturing, we garment, gases, we went to industrial gases too. All the sectors, we cover them.
Okay, and we can provide further more detailed information after. Mr. Jampro, we can give you a more detailed line out thereafter.
Yeah, we can give him a more detailed breakdown.
Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're now at item 5 of your agenda, which is the overview of trade agreements and their qualifying criteria, rules of origin. Now, I'll be taking you through this segment, but I want to put some caveats in place before I start. The first thing is that after the end of this session, you will not be a specialist in rules of origin. The whole purpose, because it's a very technical area. And so what we're trying to do is for you to just have an understanding as to what it is, rules of origin requirements are. If it is that you have some light bulb while you're here, as this is the market that you want to enter, you get an idea as to what product you want and what countries you want to engage in. And so this seminar is not a technical seminar, but it's more sharing of information seminar for you to thereafter follow up with the Trade Board and the Customs Agency, Jamaica Customs Agency, if the needs be. Okay, so forgive me while I'm going to try to go through it very quickly. You'll get a chance to ask questions after, but I just want to bring home the point that we'll be not dealing with technical questions, but just more information sharing. All right. Next slide, please. Or should I use the clicker? Thank you. Okay, so there are 4 areas we're going to be looking at throughout this presentation. The first one is Jamaica's certifying authority for selected trade agreements and arrangements. The second one is the administration of rules of origin for the various trade agreements and arrangements. Third one is the verifying of the product analysis processes. And the fourth one is the certificate of origin. Next slide, please. Now, the Trade Board Limited, specifically the Export Certification Division, is a governmental authority to certify goods for rules of origin for preferential trade agreements. What we do at the Trade Board is we analyze the documents to ensure that whatever requirements or whatever composition make up your particular good that you're seeking to export qualifies under a preferential trade agreement to be certified for the rules of origin. After it is certified, then we issue a certificate of origin. Now, in layman terms, my understanding, a certificate of origin is like a passport. As if you want to travel, if you want to go to a particular place and you need a visa, for example, your good would need that visa to take it to that country to say that it is qualified. Once it qualifies, then you are able to get duty-free and a reduction of some taxes at the customs agencies. I should tell you from before, because I have had this experience with a particular exporter, particularly under the CARICOM arrangement, is that whilst it is that you get the benefit where duties are waived, there are certain other fees and charges that customs may charge. But the big thing is that the duties is the bigger cost, and so that would be waived, and you'll have a greater advantage in the market of the country that you're entering. Okay? Next slide, please. So these are the preferential trade agreements / arrangements that Jamaica is a party to. The revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, which is the CARICOM one. I'll go through them a little bit quickly because Carl in his presentation and Dr. Blake spoke about them very clearly. And so there's the CBI, which is the one with the US. There is the Canada one. There is the General System of Preferences, and I'll go into a little bit more about that one as to who the parties are in that one. There's the CARICOM Venezuela. There is the CARICOM Colombia. Next slide, please. There is the CARICOM Dominican Republic. There's the CARICOM Costa Rica. There's the CARICOM Cuba. There's the CARIFORUM EU EPA. There's the CARIFORUM UK EPA. So the whole thrust of these trade agreements is that whoever you're trading with, it gives you an opportunity to go to those markets. And so now we'll go more clearly and more succinctly into the rules governing these trade agreements as to how you get the certificates of origin from the Trade Board Limited. Next slide, please. So under the CARICOM, which is the most popular, there are 13 member states, of which there's Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Belize, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago. So ladies and gentlemen, both online and physically, it's important as I go through for you to note who your trading partners are or who are part of the agreement. Because when we go into the rules of origin breakdown, you'll recognize that you can also source goods from these countries that are part of the trading agreement. And so you don't have to only find the goods in Jamaica, for example, for it to qualify, but you could also lean on those partners that are part of the trading agreement to also have the good qualify. And so under the CARICOM arrangement, there are basically 3 rules of origin. So what the rules of origin means, like in every trade agreement, is the rule that will enable it to get the benefit of when it enters another country that is a party to the agreement, that there is no to low duty. All right? That's pretty much why you want it to qualify under the rules of origin, because you want to ensure that when it enters the market of the country that you wish to trade with, that there is low to no duty. For the CARICOM one, the rules are wholly produced, and what wholly produced means is that the final product is produced from goods in Jamaica or other parties that is a party to the treaty. And so, for example, in the CARICOM arrangement, if it is that you wanted to produce something like corn or a cow, for example, if you wanted to sell meat, if you can be shown that you got the meat from Barbados, who is also a party to the CARICOM, then you'll be able to export it to Guyana with low or no duty, because both products, if you use the meat to a part of the meat, to specific parts of the meat, was obtained from Guyana, but you're seeking to export it to Barbados. Because the meat comes from Guyana, even though you're in Jamaica, it still qualifies because Guyana is a part of the treaty. Barbados is a part of the treaty who is also receiving the meat. Have I confused? I thought I did, so I wanted to make it clear, right? And so when you look at wholly obtained could be goods from goods produced in Jamaica or the other member states of the treaty. It could be things taken from the soil. It could be extracted minerals. It could be taken from the seabed. And it could be animals that were born or raised in the countries that are a party to the treaty. So that's pretty much all agreements. So when I'm going through them, you will see that almost every agreement, wholly produced, is a criteria. Once you can show that a product was wholly produced, so it was taken from the country, Jamaica, for example, or another member state of who is a party to that particular agreement, and you're exporting it to another party who's a particular in that agreement, a member state of that agreement, then it will be qualifying under rules of origin. The next criteria is change in tariff classification. Those of you that are familiar with goods will be familiar with the HS nomenclature. So these are called harmonized codes. And so pretty much every good in the world has that HS code. That is how goods are traded. That's how customs understand each other when goods come in. That's how taxes are charged, that's how duties are charged based on the HS code that's assigned to each good. And so another way under the CARICOM agreement is to get the rules of origin to qualify is through change of tariff heading. And what that means is that the final product is classified in a different tariff heading from the non-originating materials that were used. So for example, let us say your final product is ketchup. Ketchup, HS code is 20.03.20, right? That's a universal HS code. You don't even have to understand HS codes because Trade Board will help you navigate through that. But what you have to understand is to make the ketchup, you probably only have tomatoes. The mere fact that you have tomatoes, which is in the HS code of chapter 702, that's a different chapter from the 2103 that ketchup is in. So you're moving from tomatoes from 07 to ketchup, which is in 21. So that's a change in HS code because the final product changes the tariff code. So remember, your original code, your original product was tomatoes, and you add some other things to it to make it into ketchup. If it were, for example, that ketchup perhaps was also classified as 7, as chapter 7, like tomatoes, then perhaps you would not be eligible because there was no change in the tariff code, right? So that's another way that you can benefit under the rules of origin, under the CARICOM agreement. No, can you go back, please? And then the third way is value added. Now, this one is a lot more technical. So this is where a good is substantially transformed and there's an assessment expressed in the maximum allowance in value for non-materials that are of non-origin and materials that are originating. So when goods are being looked at to be classified on the rules of origin, they're pretty much in two categories, originating and non-originating. What this rule allows you to do is use products that are non-originating and transform it in such a way that it becomes originating. So it gives you a certain percentage that you may use in terms of non-originating goods. So non-originating goods can be goods from another country, for example, that would have not ordinarily qualify under the rules, right? So the whole thrust of trade agreements is to ensure that the parties to the trade agreement have a beneficial relationship between each other. And that's why it's called preferential. Have I lost anybody? Because it's technical, you know. All right, we'll move on to the next slide. And so the beauty, which you won't see in the other agreements, excuse me, I'll just break for the minister. Minister, would you like to take a seat up here? Yes. So the safeguard mechanism under the CARICOM agreement. So unlike the other agreements, CARICOM is a little bit more lenient to the extent that it allows this thing called a safeguard. Now, what the safeguard mechanism is, it's a mechanism that has been built into the rules of origin criteria that enables a temporary derogation from normal requirements of rules of origin. So derogation is just a big word to say exception, right? So what usually happens is when you have goods, there are certain rules or there are certain processes that you have to follow for it to qualify under rules of origin. Sometimes when you're making a good and you have raw materials and you don't have enough raw materials within your region for it to qualify, you have to get the raw materials from somewhere else. But if you want to go outside somewhere else, let us say you wanted to make banana chips, for example, and there was no more bananas in Jamaica or St. Lucia, but you wanted to trade banana chips still within the region, if you took the bananas from Honduras, it wouldn't qualify because it's outside of the arrangement with the parties that are party to this treaty. And so what would happen is if you were to take your bananas and made banana chips from Honduras and you were to export it to, let us say, Trinidad and Tobago, you would not get the benefits because the bananas were not sourced within the region or within the parties or among the parties to the trade agreement. So what CARICOM has done is that they have allowed in certain situations where if you had like a hurricane or something like that and you're no longer able to get the bananas, because the whole thrust is not to kill manufacturing. So for example, if GP had a hurricane and there was no bananas to get, then they would have a problem producing banana chips. And so what CARICOM has done is they have allowed this thing called a safeguard where you can apply through the Ministry of Industry to say you want a safeguard to import bananas from somewhere else on a temporary basis so that you can use it until the banana industry grows back within the region and you're able to use regional products. Okay, so that's what a safeguard is. Of all the arrangements thus far, this is the only agreement that is so flexible. But remember now, we're not looking to trade in the region. Remember what the minister said? The region too small. We'll have to look outside, right? Right, okay, so moving to the next presentation, please. So these are some examples of what goods qualify. You have tin akis and tin callaloo, you have water, you have bun, ketchup, pepper sauces, rum, lotion, seasonings, black castor oil, crackers, and biscuits. So presently we have been issuing certificates of origin for these particular products. Okay, so we move on to the next agreement, which is the CBI. And this arrangement is between the US and 24 Caribbean countries. And as I said before, ladies and gentlemen, it's important to know who the trading partners are because you don't have to source material from only Jamaica, but you could look to those trading partners as well to get the materials from them, to create the good, to export back to one of them to get the benefit. And so those trading partners include the same CARICOM partners. The new ones would have been like Aruba, the British Virgin Islands, Guatemala, El Salvador, next slide please, Nicaragua, Panama, right? So this opens you up to even a bigger market than the CARICOM one has. Next slide please. And so there are two main rules of origin requirements under the arrangement with the US. Wholly produced, which we already explained, so you'd have to get the product from in Jamaica or from one of the other 24 CARICOM CBI countries and to trade with the US or to trade with any of them. Our value addition, which I told you is a more technical requirement where you have to look at originating versus non-originating and the percentage that the agreement says needs to be had for it to qualify. Okay, so goods to date that we have issued certificates of origin for the CBI are like baked goods like bun. Well, everybody know about bun because when you go to New York, they always have Jamaican bun. So this is how they get it, right, under this arrangement. Black castor oil, pepper powder, and ketchup. So this particular agreement is very specific as to what is not included. Whereas CARICOM is a little bit more liberal, this one is very specific where there are certain products that no matter how you try to make them qualify, it will just not be able to get a certificate of origin. It will get no visa. Because the agreement stipulates that these goods are not for consideration in terms of getting a certificate of origin. Just to go back, please. So these goods, yes, so the goods that are excluded are leather, flat leather, luggage, handbags, footwear, except disposable items and foot parts, most textiles, petroleum, canned tuna, watch, or watch parts. So if it is that you wanted to export any of those items to the US, you would not get a certificate of origin because the agreement is specific that those goods are off the table. It's not for consideration to receive a certificate of origin. Next slide, please. All right, so we move on to the one with Canada. Now, this one, too, opens up some new markets for us in the region as compared to the CARICOM one, where there are also some other Caribbean states that you can trade with or get goods from for it to qualify as origin. Okay. So these countries, so these are new countries now. So what is new is Anguilla. So if you have anything in Anguilla that you think that you may want to have a niche marketing, you could look to Anguilla to see what you could use and mix it with something in Jamaica to export to Canada or to pretty much to Canada. Because otherwise what we find is that when we're exporting to each other mean in the region, we use a CARICOM arrangement. And so we use these other arrangements for the external party, like with Canada or with the US, even though Caribbean countries are also parties to the other ones. Have I confused? You're not saying, but all right, no problem. So under this one, there are more countries that we can consider, unlike the CARICOM one. So there's Anguilla, there's the British Virgin Islands, there is Cayman, there's Turks and Caicos. Next, And so the rules of origin requirement for this is wholly produced and value added. The goods to date that we have issued certificates of origin for under the CARIBCAN is rum, pepper sauces, body lotion, and ketchup. Now the GSP. I find that not many persons know about the GSP. So the GSP is a configuration or provision that was created under the WTO to assist developing countries. And so it's a one-way arrangement where developing countries can produce goods qualifying under certain rules that can be exported to developed countries. And so under the GSP, you have a new market, you have Australia, you have Belarus. I mean, if you're still interested in Russia, you have Russia, you have Hungary, you have Switzerland, you have Japan, you have New Zealand. Again, these are other markets for you to consider when you want to export to other countries. Next slide, please. So what you'll find, if I stay on this slide a little bit more, which is not presented here, is that under the GSP2, there are other, it also includes the European Union and the UK, but with the introduction of the other two agreements I'll tell you about later on, it stands to reason that you get more benefits under those agreements, and more benefits meaning that the rules are more liberal, and so your good can qualify. And so we don't usually encourage persons to utilize the GSP for trading to the UK or to the EU countries, because there are more liberal agreements where it's not as hard for your good to qualify. But we are encouraging, if you have a niche market, if you want to trade in Japan or New Zealand or Australia, then you can consider the GSP. Next. So the rules of origin is wholly produced. Remember I said to you before, once you can meet wholly produced, you can meet every agreement. But chances are a lot of goods, they really can't meet wholly produced because we don't have certain things in Jamaica to meet wholly produced. And so this is where you'd rely on the change in tariff heading or the value added propositions to help you for your good to qualify. Then we have the Venezuelan agreement. This one is a little bit more limited for more reasons than one. In this agreement, they specify what the positive list is. So in short, what the positive list is that they have identified in this agreement what goods we can trade in to get a certificate of origin. So if the good is not on this list, then it cannot be traded in to get the certificate of origin. But I should warn you that, which is no news, that Venezuela is having some financial constraints. And so whilst we would encourage for you to trade in Venezuela, be mindful as to what relationships you're getting in, because you may have some financial constraints in trading with Venezuela. Next slide, please. Oh, I keep forgetting. I'm sorry, I have the clicker. Right, so the rules of origin requirements are threefold in this one: wholly produced, change in tariff classification, value added. Then there is the agreement with Colombia. Again, it provides duty-free access for certain products, which is included on the positive list and which will qualify. So as I said to you before, which a trade board will help you, is to identify what goods are on the positive list that will help you to meet the rules of origin to trade with Colombia. So they pretty much have the same rules of origin requirements for Venezuela and Colombia. But I guess the only difference between the two is that it may be easier for you to get your monies if you were to trade with Colombia. Then there's the arrangement with the Dominican Republic. This agreement provides duty-free and preferential access for all products with the exception of those listed on a list. Again, similarly to the Venezuela and Colombia, there's a list of items that are prohibited. If the item doesn't meet that particular list, then you won't be able to get the certificate of origin. There have been some challenges with Dominica. You would have heard that Carl mentioned Law 173, which pretty much means that you have to have a third party to once you want to sell goods in the Dominican Republic, you have to have a third party to be a middle person. They're called a distributive party. But I know it's something the Ministry of Industry, I see Clifford here, I'm not sure if he's apprised to give us any information, but this has been around for a very long time, and exporters have complained for a very long time. So I would imagine that it's on the ministry's radar for them to deal with that. Because what it means is that you have locked yourself into this particular party, and it's very hard to get out. But this agreement is very liberal in terms of the rules of origin. There are actually 5 criteria: wholly produced, change of tariff heading, change of tariff subheading, change of chapter. So both changes, all those references to changes refers to the HS nomenclature, where you can change based on the breakdown of the HS code. So similarly to the tomato and the ketchup, I made it a lot simpler, but there are further breakdowns that you can do to get these changes. Then there's the agreement with Costa Rica. Again, similarly to the others, they have the same rules of origin requirements. Then there's the agreement with Cuba. What we found is that there are some items that qualify. This agreement is a little bit restrictive too, but there is a way to maneuver in terms of the items that have traditionally qualified. Some items that have qualified for certificates of origin are chemicals, some chemicals too, not all chemicals, alcoholic beverages excluding rum, because they're our biggest competitor, so they would have made sure to put that in the trade agreement that we can't export rum to them under preferential arrangements because it's a big competition for them. Animal and vegetable oil and fats, bread, biscuits, bun, cocoa powder, cocoa beans. The rules of origin requirements are very similar to the others: wholly produced, change of tariff heading, value added. I'm happy the gentleman is here from Exim Bank because there is a credit facility with Exim Bank. I'm seeing him shake his head, so I guess we'll raise the question. It doesn't exist anymore, Mr. Exim Bank? Oh, it's suspended. That's unfortunate. That's something we need to raise to see how we can get it back active. Because I know that similarly to Venezuela, the credit facilities coming out of Cuba tends to be very difficult. And so when you had the Exim Bank as that intermediary, it certainly helped our exporters and gave them more confidence to want to trade with Cuba. So not having that middleman may create a problem, but that's something we should probably discuss. Okay, so we move on to CARIFORUM EU EPA. So the Trade Board does not issue certificates of origin for any of the CARIFORUM EU or any of the economic partnership agreements. These are done by the Jamaica Customs Agency, but nonetheless, the same rules of origin requirements are there. This particular agreement is a good one in the sense that it opens you up to even more markets of the EU. And so we're not only restricted to our colonial past with the UK, but we can look at Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Luxembourg, Italy, Poland, Portugal. There are quite a few countries, as you can see, 20-odd countries. So it gives you the opportunity, again, to comply with our minister, to look outside our borders to see where you want to trade. Jamaica has gotten to be very popular, and so our foods are also very popular, and we have tourists that come here that likes our foods from even Europe. And so if you can tap into that market and supply them with our foods in those countries, you may have a $1 million business there budding, okay? And so these are the regular countries that are in CARIFORUM. But just to say that it's important to know, as I said before, the other countries, because you can take raw material from them to help your product. So it may not be fully classified as as wholly produced. Well, depending on what it is, but even wholly produced, if it is that, for example, you wanted to, going back to the banana example, if it is that, or we had a hurricane, hopefully not this year, and it is that St. Lucia has a lot of bananas, you could use St. Lucia's bananas and export it to Croatia and get the same certificate of origin for wholly produced because it's taken from a country within the same agreement. So you still be able to qualify for wholly produced. One of the things the customs agency wanted me to point out is that one of the rules with the CARIFORUM agreement is direct consignment. And so what direct consignment means is that the transportation, they look specifically at how the goods is transported. Because these preferential agreements are preferential, in the sense that it's not given to everybody, they want to ensure that when the product leaves the customs territory of the originating country, who would have issued a certificate of origin, it arrives to the importing country untouched. And so one of the rules of direct consignment is that even if the good is in transit, so for example, there is no straight ship from here to Croatia, it clearly has to stop somewhere else. And so what that rule is, if it stops somewhere else, they have to ensure that the customs territory in that area has control of the good, and so the good is not manipulated. And so when it gets to Croatia, they can be satisfied that it's still wholly produced coming from Jamaica. And so similarly, we have an agreement with the UK. Same rules apply for both the EU EPA and the UK EPA. And this is the information for the Jamaica Customs Agency. Should you need more information if you want to trade using any of the EPAs, the EPA with the EU or the EPA with the UK. So we now move on to verifying our product analysis. So what happens if you're interested in a good? A lot of times you probably don't know if it meets the rules of origin requirement. And so what you may want to do first is to call the trade board to get some kind of guidance. After you've been given that guidance, you'll be asked to complete a product analysis form. Pretty much the form speaks to your details as to the name of the entity that is seeking to export. Does not have to be a company. It could also be a sole proprietor or an individual. There are no restrictions in that regard. You would speak about the product that you are seeking to export. I wish this was bigger. I'm not too sure. It's not very clear. But you could also, I can see it better here. You'd speak to the materials, so what the trade board would do, but you would know this from before, right? Because you want to call the trade board first before you actually complete the form. It speaks to the materials. You want to divulge what materials you've used. And this is important, not to hold your secrets as to how your pepper sauce tastes different from somebody else's, but really because we have to ensure that the ingredients that make up your pepper sauce qualifies for the rule under the agreement. And so there's one standard form for all trade agreements that we administer certificates of origin for. So it makes no sense really going through this form per se because we can't really see it. But just take home the point that you will be required to disclose where you get your material from. If it's a local product, you'll have to show the receipt. If you get it from overseas, you'd have to show the invoice. Am I correct, Ms. Butler? The invoice, you'd have to show the invoice to reflect where you got it from, so the trade board can look back into that invoice. Because remember, at the end of the day, we have to ensure that whatever ingredients you're using to make the final product, that it qualifies under the given trade agreement. Okay, so these are the things that are required for you before you get a certificate of origin from the trade board. And again, the certificate is like your visa or your passport. It goes with the product to whichever country that you are seeking to access the market to show that under the trade agreement that this product is qualified under the rules of origin, and here's a certificate to prove it, and so you shouldn't charge any duties on it because it has qualified. And so in order to get the certificate of origin, you need to issue a cover letter, you need to complete the product analysis form, trade board needs to see a copy of the C87 form, trade board needs to see a copy of the commercial invoice, the TRN number for the person or the company that is seeking to export, and a most recent copy of the JAMPRO letter. So here how JAMPRO gets involved now. In order for us to qualify, if you're going to export on a commercial basis, you most definitely have to be registered with JAMPRO as an exporter. And so I'm not sure if you're aware, but even when you're registering with JAMPRO, again, it's not limited to companies. Individuals and business can register. So don't be afraid because you're like a small entity operating in your backyard that you think that you won't be able to register and become an exporter. You can, right? You can just go on JAMPRO's website, which is given here, and you can register, and they will tell you what documents are required, and then to ensure that you're an exporter, they will also do a site visit to confirm that you're an exporter or that you have systems in place to export. Once that is done, we would require that letter from JAMPRO. After that is done, then you move on to step 2, which is you make contact with the trade board now because you're ready to help for the trade board to help you to fill out your product analysis form. After that is done, you'll complete and submit your product analysis form to the trade board. When that is accepted, if you are a first-time applicant seeking to export for the first time, the trade board will conduct a site visit. If you're fortunate enough and you're lucrative enough and you're in the business for a longer time, then we conduct visits every 3 years to ensure that your processes are still consistent with the rules. Then once all of that is done, then you go to J-Swift's website, and Dr. Blake and Carl would have spoken earlier about J-Swift. And then those are the steps now when you get on the website as to what you press. But the truth is you're not ready for those steps yet because you have to call trade board first to see if your product can qualify. And these are the beautiful persons at the Export Certification Division at the trade board. And thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I know I've given you a mouthful, so we're going to invite you. Is coffee break ready? To coffee break. Unfortunately, I went over the time, so I'm going to give you a little extra 5 minutes. But I know you're hungry for more information, so I know you just want to just refresh yourselves and come back. So I'm asking if you can come back in by 10:50. And then we'll move on to the next presentation. All right? Thank you.
The Trade Board Limited is an agency of the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. We are a silver sponsor for Expo Jamaica 2023 and we are delighted to be here.
We're very pleased that after maybe 4 years because of the pandemic, we have not had an expo at all. So Expo 2023 is the opening up.
Just to look at the expo, there are so many manufacturers, so many participants, so many potential exporters, and we are just delighted to promote the services being offered by the Trade Board Limited.
This is so important because what it does, it offers not only persons in the diaspora, but persons who are interested in trading with Jamaica a one-stop shop so they can find as many information about all the services, all the opportunities, and all of their regimes that person need to access in order to trade with Jamaica.
The Step Up Export Initiative is designed to help manufacturers and producers obtain preferential treatment on their Jamaican manufactured products and produce. So we're excited to be here at Expo Jamaica. We're delighted to engage with our manufacturers.
We must invest a lot more, and whatever we do in Jamaica, we have to export exponentially more. So it's the manufacturers, the service providers who have to export more, and I'm glad lots of the small people are here and they're really into export. So you're going to have a lot of good work at the Trade Board.
I am very, very excited to be a part of Expo Jamaica. The Licensing, Certification and Enforcement Division of the Trade Board deals with the issuance of import and export permits for a variety of commodities, the certification of motor vehicle dealers and scrap metal dealerships. The Trade Board Limited is an agency of the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. We are a silver sponsor for Expo Jamaica 2023 and we are delighted to be here.
We're very pleased that after maybe 4 years because of the pandemic, we have not had an expo at all. So Expo 2023 is the opening up.
Just to look at the expo, there are so many manufacturers, so many participants, so many potential exporters, and we are just delighted to promote the services being offered by the Trade Board Limited.
This is so important because what it does, it offers not only persons in the diaspora, but persons who are interested in trading with Jamaica a one-stop shop so they can find as many information about all the services, all the opportunities, and all of their regimes that person need to access in order to trade with Jamaica.
The Step Up Export initiative is designed to help manufacturers and producers obtain preferential treatment on their Jamaican manufactured products and produce. So we're excited to be here at Expo Jamaica. We're delighted to engage with our manufacturers.
We must invest a lot more, and whatever we do in Jamaica, we have to export exponentially more. So it's the manufacturers, the service providers who have to export more. And I'm glad lots of the small people are here and they're really into export. So you're going to have a lot of good work at the Trade Board.
very excited to be a part of Expo Jamaica. The Licensing, Certification and Enforcement Division of the Trade Board deals with the issuance of import and export permits for a variety of commodities, the certification of motor vehicle dealers and scrap metal dealerships. The Trade Board Limited is an agency of the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. We are a silver sponsor for Expo Jamaica 2023 and we are delighted to be here.
We're very pleased that after maybe 4 years because of the pandemic, we have not had an expo at all. So Expo 2023 is the opening up.
Just to look at the expo, there are so many manufacturers, so many participants, so many potential exporters, and we are just delighted to promote the services being offered by the Trade Board Limited.
This is so important because what it does, it offers not only persons in the diaspora, but persons who are interested in trading with Jamaica a one-stop shop so they can find as many information about all the services, all the opportunities, and all of their regimes that person needs to access in order to trade with Jamaica.
The Step Up Export initiative is designed to help manufacturers and producers obtain preferential treatment on their Jamaican manufactured products and produce. So we're excited to be here at Expo Jamaica. We're delighted to engage with our manufacturers.
We must invest a lot more, and whatever we do in Jamaica, we have to export exponentially more. So it's the manufacturers, the service providers who have to export more. And I'm glad lots of the small people are here and they're really into export. So you're going to have a lot of good work at the Trade Board.
They can hear me out there, Mr. They can hear me out there, or they can.
I am very, very excited to be a part of Expo Jamaica. The Licensing, Certification and Enforcement Division of the Trade Board deals with the issuance of import and export permits for a variety of commodities, the certification of motor vehicle dealers and scrap metal dealerships. The Trade Board Limited is an agency of the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. We are a silver sponsor for Expo Jamaica 2023 and we are delighted to be here.
We're very pleased that after maybe 4 years because of the pandemic, we have not had an expo at all. So Expo 2023 is the opening up.
Just to look at the expo, there are so many manufacturers, so many participants, so many potential exporters, and we are just delighted to promote the services being offered by the Trade Board Limited.
This is so important because what it does, it offers not only persons in the diaspora, but persons who are interested in trading with Jamaica a one-stop shop so they can find as many information about all the services, all the opportunities, and all of their regimes that person needs to access in order to trade with Jamaica.
The Step Up Export initiative is designed to help manufacturers and producers obtain preferential treatment on their Jamaican manufactured products and produce. So we're excited to be here at Expo Jamaica. We're delighted to engage with our manufacturers.
We must invest a lot more, and whatever we do in Jamaica, we have to export exponentially more. So it's the manufacturers, the service providers who have to export more. And I'm glad lots of the small people are here and they're really into export. So you're going to have a lot of good work at the trade board.
Dr. Blake, Stephen, Daniel. Hi.
Most beautiful girl in the world.
Long
You
time.
squeezed out the last note a while ago.
How
So
you
you're
doing,
just
Robert?
passing through or you're back?
I'm back. I've been back since 2021. Contract ended and I'm back.
Okay, so I obviously I'm staying under a rock.
Yes, but I haven't been doing much.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's nice. So you're back at Trade Board?
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent.
So we're going to catch up.
We have to.
Yes. All right. All right. So we'll sing happy birthday. Okay.
Yeah, my
At the
officer,
end.
happy birthday.
All right. I will. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'll just see the minister and Dr. Blake can come. See the minister and Dr. Blake can come. We can start. Yeah. Well, how we are with time? Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Yes. Hello. No, no, sit, please. Please. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I don't know, but I hope so. Minister of State in the Ministry of Infrastructure and Commerce. You can just make Dr. Blake, you can take Dr. Blake to come. Carl. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next presentation from Mr. Stephen Dawkins. The topic is negotiating the challenges of exports and members' perspective. Mr. Dawkins.
I wanted my full audience. Yeah, go ahead, Robert. I know you'll support me. Good morning, everyone. I want everybody to know who is speaking. So, just there.
So just to recognize the minister, Minister Norman Dunn, the Minister of State in the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. Welcome, Minister. Can we give him a round of applause, please? Thank you. Okay.
Minister Dunn, good morning. Everyone, good morning. I'm Stephen Dawkins. This is, in fact, a very good presentation because earlier in the morning, because I have dealt with the Trade Board for many, many years, and the information is truly, indeed, refreshing because you think you know a lot, but you really don't know everything. Because I think I know everything in export because I've been exporting for quite a while. I spent my early years at Jerry and Neville, in which I was Caribbean area manager, and I visited the world. In fact, during my export years, I visited about 31 countries, or probably more, stretching Asia, which is Australia, New Zealand, coming into the region, Mexico, all over the Caribbean, Europe, Netherlands, all over, a lot of countries. And I said to people that you travel the world if you're in entertainment, if you're in sports, and if you're in exports, right? So that's what I tell my son. Choose one of them if you want to travel the world. Now, my presentation is a little bit different from what is happening, what happened previously. I'm going to present the reality of exports. And like I said to most persons as I do presentations over the years, export is not easy. And importantly, it must be deliberate. And companies must form an export strategy in order to be really, really successful. I don't know if anybody remember, I shouldn't say remember, everybody know the brand Red Label Wine, or the product Red Label Wine. While I was at Ray Neville, that product could not be exported. Why it couldn't be exported? Because the name could not be registered in certain key markets that it needed to go to. So one of the things that I've always implored companies to do, when you're developing a product, ensure that the product is internationally ready, right? I'm now at Wisynco. I've been at Wisynco for the last more than 10 years, heading into 12 years, and there's a product called Boom Energy Drink. While Boom Energy Drink is exported, it can't be registered in certain markets because there are names that you can't register as a brand or a trademark. Boom can't be registered. Red Label Wine, Red Label can't be registered. And these are some of the challenges we face. Now, this presentation is the Wisynco's perspective where export is concerned. Generally speaking, most Jamaican companies export to the diaspora markets, which includes North America, Europe, and the Caribbean. When I look at my Wisynco sales, it is evenly split between the three. Although earlier I heard that the CARIBCOM is small, it's really not small because sometimes you tend to ignore it and it adds up, right? It's 5 million people in the region, but it adds up in the English-speaking region, it adds up. So I tend to encourage persons to definitely export to the region. These are the exporting countries that Wisynco goes to. It spanned Europe, North America, and all the Caribbean islands. I'm going to speak a little bit about Cuba because I heard about Cuba. Up to last year, this time, we were exporting 10 40-foot containers into Cuba on a monthly basis, right? We enter Cuba through agents. I've been going to Cuba 5 years trying to get the product in, and eventually we got it in. And doing pretty well. So we entered with the Tetra Pak format, True Juice brand, doing extremely well. But a simple movement in price can change everything. And that is what I'm speaking about when you understand challenges. So the product moved from $3.05 per case to $3 and I think is 9 cents, and they decided that they can't take it anymore. So they go to another brand. So it's very difficult, but the reality is that we have to export profitably, right? Profitably. And one of the things that I heard a lot earlier is that we have all of these trade agreements, trade laws, trade issues, but the reality is that most businesses are in business to make a profit. And if you're not going to be able to export profitably, then it's not going to make sense. And as a director of the JMEA, and I've been a director of the JEA for a very long time, since 10 years I spent on both associations, the JEA and the JMEA. In 2016, we put out a plan, Robert would remember, that we would have a target to hit $2.5 billion in export sales. We haven't done that. since 2016. In fact, last year was one of our biggest years. I think it was $1.9 billion in export sales. Now, again, it is deliberate, and I ask, and this is what my presentation is about, being deliberate if we really want to truly export. Right here, I list a number of challenges. Quality of the products that we export, meeting the market requirements that we went through earlier, bringing new products to market. How do you do that? Competitiveness, climate change, which is critical and a critical factor in what you do when you're exporting products. Access to information, packaging, finance that we discussed earlier, and the permits and turnarounds from the agencies. In fact, when I was asked to do this presentation, I reached out to my board members of the JME and asked them, what are the challenges they have? When I get the WhatsApp, I just send it on a WhatsApp, and I get about 500 challenges, right? And I said, boy, I couldn't approach it that way. I can't approach the presentation in a challenge, all the issues we have. Because what I will tell you is that being in it for so long, and what the Trade Board is now doing, I'm truly, 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 truly pleased, because it has been difficult. It has become much easier now. The old JSIP thing that we introduced, it has become a lot easier. And Major Blake, with the research that you are doing, it's critical, because if you don't understand what the companies are going through, then it don't make sense. And if export is a critical element for growth, then you have to understand what it takes, right? When you look at the world and you look at the countries that are strong GDP, strong, rich countries, as the Minister Albany always says, their top 3 GDP, when you're looking at export, is either 1, 2, or 3, right? Export of the economy. It has to be that way. So we have to be very, very deliberate where that is concerned, right? No, there's a maze of issues that companies have to go through, right? And I thank you, you're making it a lot easier. The government agencies, and I'm telling you this, if we are trying to get a certificate of free sale into a market, at one time we didn't even know which government agency we go through. In fact, the Bureau of Standards and the Ministry of Health could issue the same document. So what we do, which was the most efficient agency, the Bureau of Standards. So we went through them because the Ministry of Health used to take very, very long. So there are duplication of a lot of functions in the ministries, and I think this is one of the things that we have to definitely work on in terms of efficiencies. And I tell you, when I used to apply for the safeguard that I get beat up for all the time, when I used to apply for the safeguard, I wasn't certain which government agency I was to go through. So I went through the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, and then I went through Trade Board. Oh, I have to stop for the export czar. And while I'm in my presentation, I tell you, I've been in export for 12 years. Well, to add Navy years, it's 15 years export. And this is the first time I have consistently get up every day and hear the export czar preaching export. So it's a good thing, right? Now, look at this, right? This is a challenge, and this is what companies I say would have to go through. We export bigger. Bigger is the #1 exported product from the Wisynco Group, right? A lot of people don't know that. We export over 1 million cases of bigger across the world. A lot of people don't know this. The minister was at our factory the other day, and he was in awe. I'm support, right? The warehouse and the factory, he was in awe. Now, to get the product exported, it has to be deliberate. So you look at the countries that we need to go to, the USA. What we try to do is standardize the labels. but the labels cannot be standardized for all markets that you have to be in. So we have to print labels for different markets. If you notice, this is the Netherlands label. It has the language on the label because that is their requirement. So we have to put it there. Also, with the whole Brexit situation, what happens in the UK no longer happens in the EU. So you have to separate. One time it was one label that we could use to go there. No, we can't use both labels. So these are some critical issues that companies must face and will face in terms of their, heading into markets. And I could go through a myriad of things, but these are just some of the many, many issues. Look at, I spoke about climate change. What is happening now? You know the plastic dynamics of getting plastics recycled. Now, what we are forced to do, and this is an additional, I wouldn't say an additional cost, but an additional process in your operations. Obviously, it's an additional cost because now the next step is that the caps on the bottles in some markets, the EU markets where bigger is our number one exported product, we now have to make the product with the cap attached to that label. So what we have to do now is to refine our production processes, get the equipment if we want to be in the business of exporting. So these are some critical issues that companies will face and will have to do it, right? About 2 years ago, when I was vice president under the Pandoy administration, we developed a 10-point plan, right? A 10-point export growth plan. Some were activated, but some are not yet, right? And the tax relief up there, and I'm saying it, and I'm glad the minister is here, and I'm glad that I am given this opportunity to say it. The only way Jamaican companies will be focused on export is if it becomes profitable for them, because we are all in business for export. I see where the certificates were issued, that in some countries, even though we have some, no certificates were issued, because it's difficult. It is not a simple process of getting up. So what we do, the easier markets is what companies go to, the diaspora market, the USA, North America, Canada, the Europe, UK, and so on. Yes, it's small hanging fruit, so we do that. But when I was entering, I have 5 minutes left. It's so much. It's hard to discuss this in 15 minutes. When I was entering the United States to make the number one exported product, I had to buy 400 coolers and put them in all Golden Cross restaurants across the United States. We sponsored every single jerk festival that you could think of. We branded Florida buses to put bigger on the Florida buses, right? We do trade promotions in every restaurant across Florida because Jamaican food is the best food. Somebody said it earlier, and it's the fastest growing restaurants in the US. Jamaican restaurants are the fastest. Think about it, and it contributes to our growth as well. And so we do a lot of partnership in the United States, in the US. And I'm saying this because if you're going to export, you have to invest in the product. You have to invest in the brand. And it's not easy. So when we're doing launch, we're constantly out there putting it in there. This is in the UK and so on. Because I'm rushing, trade shows are absolutely necessary. You cannot export if you don't go to trade shows across the world.
Say it again.
No, you can't export if you don't beat the pavement across the world. Go to every possible trade show that you can go to. People will know your products that way, right? I just rushing through. I'm just showing you what we have done and the investments that we have made. We put billboards in other markets. This is in Trinidad. They have said to me that I can't do it. I remember my chairman said to me, Stephen, don't go to the Bahamas because their taxes are too high, their import duties too high. I'm saying, no, I'm going. Bahamas is one of our top 5 buying markets right now. And I could speak on this. We sponsored Britain Got Talent, right, a couple years ago. Britain Got Talent. So when you see this product on the screen after every performance, it says wonders. So everybody asking now, who is drinking bigger? Because the amount of bigger that we're sending into the UK, there's no way it is just a diaspora market. It has gone into mainstream. So this is the investment levels that we are doing. So 15 minutes, I could have gone through a lot more, but this is 5 more minutes. All right. So listen, another thing is that all right, can you play this for me, sir?
Mornings with Z99's Tim and Terry could hardly be more entertaining, hilarious, or juicy. Until now. Every morning next week, win a case of True Juice and an Echo Dot with Tim and Terry's True Juice question of the day at 8:20. Now they've truly got the most juice in Cayman. Really, guys? Seriously? That's what? Oh, for Terry. Terry can't refuse a pun. All right, fine, whatever. It's a juicy question of the day. 8:20 weekday mornings with Tim and Terry for a free case of True Juice and an Echo Dot every day next week from the best station in Cayman. Juice 99. I mean Z99.
Cayman is a small island of 60,000 people. Big GDP. They are one of our biggest buyers of Wisynco products, biggest buyers. And because price in that market, it's like I mentioned Cuba earlier, where there's a change in price, lost the business. In Cayman, price is not an issue. Rich people live there. What's the per capita income, minister? $60,000, 60,000 US dollars. So you can't, when you're going to Cayman, you can maximize your margins into Cayman. That's what we do to ensure that we get it. But you also have to invest. So we do radio programs in the Cayman Islands. And those other sounds are for other markets. The thing I'm saying, guys, is that, yes, what the Trade Board is doing, the other agencies doing is fantastic, because what it is doing is allowing me to move the hassle of agreements from with the ministries, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and so on and so forth, so that we can do our work, the hardcore work of beating the pavement, going on the streets, and making the products big. Thank you very much. Could have done a lot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dawkins. What we can do is in the question and answer section, we probably can go back to Mr. Dawkins. If he has more to present in the question and answers, we can come back to him. But in the meantime, I'd like to hand over to our main address, Minister Aubin Hill, Minister of the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. Can we welcome Mr. Hill, please? Minister Hill.
Somebody, I'm sure, will be lining up my slides for me. I had on my list here PS Sansia Temple, Benny Templar, but she's still in the PS board meeting, which I have every Tuesday. That's where they run the country from. We have cabinets on Monday, and then they run the country on Tuesday. So, Ms. Dana Ashpole, very good to see you, Dana, and in your role as Board of Director of the Trade Board, I have an announcement to make, but I can't make it until I send out the letter, so the letter will come. She will still be on the board. Dr. Major Hugh Blake, Major is retired, and he's the Trade Administrator and CEO of the Trade Board, Jamaica Limited. Mrs. Kamisha Turner Blake, who's the Executive Director of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, management and staff of the trade board that really run things, under retired Major Dr. Blake. I see Mrs. Sharon May Shirley, who is the head of JANAC. And if you don't know what JANAC is, you need to know. JANAC is Jamaica National Accreditation Body, and they are authorized, I'll just tell you one piece, one of 4 bodies in the world that is authorized to handle and accredit for the federal, for the FDA, Food and Drug Administration. Now that means when they accredit your lab, you don't have to worry about FDA when you go to the United States. She runs that organization in Jamaica. That's one of 4. That organization serves 9 other countries, and maybe 10 by now. You've added an 11th country, Trinidad, Guyana, all of them. And those 4 FDA bodies I told you about, I think 2 of them are in the United States. 1 is in Asia, and 1 is in Jamaica. JANAC is an important place. If you're going to be involved in export, you need to know them just like you know the trade board. But you will get to know them in due course. They are one of the 20 agencies in the ministry that are here to serve you, to facilitate, to enable, exceptionally to regulate. We're primarily to make sure we enable, facilitate, encourage, and make sure we grow our businesses. And because there are all kinds of players in the world, exceptionally we have to regulate. But that's, and while that is there, the enabling part is what we push. So we talk, I'm happy to see exporters. I know many of you are on the line. Other specially invited guests, media practitioners, and of course all the distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Stephen gave you a wonderful presentation just now. Exciting, very good people, and it's from now a publicly traded company. I know Wisynco it was private, so you can buy shares in it. I'm not selling shares, please. I'm not an investment advisor, please. But I'm saying to you, you can see the work that Wisynco does. And you know, I have traded shares all my life. And how I used to trade shares when I go to the United States or Britain or somewhere else, I go into a business and I'm having meetings and I make sure I pick out and talk to 3, 4, 5 ordinary workers. They don't know who I am. Most times they know I'm different because I'm black. I'm in a white country, so they must know I'm different. Then if they talk to me, they know they're different. But I'm talking to them as a prospective investor. I listen to what the ordinary staff are saying. Are they happy to be in their company? I ask them all kinds of personal questions. Do they help you with your school kids? Is it easy to work here? Do you like to work here? Do you like to come to work? And based on that, I leave there, pick up my phone. My broker in New York used to be called Wing Chin. I say, Wing, I want to buy the stock. Or if I have the stock, and depending how I feel, I say, Wing, it's a sell, get out. So give him another round of applause. It was pretty stuff, good stuff, and I like that. Clearly, it's a pleasure for me to speak at the Trade Board Limited Step Up Export with Trade Agreements Dissemination Seminar. See all our banners. Just to me, we travel with them all over the world. I take them to Guyana, I take them to Trinidad. We're going to Atlanta in a week or so. They're going with us because we want the message to go. And every time we take a picture or the TV camera or the video camera takes it, we get it across the world. So it's streamed. So we're changing. We did all this when we rebranded the ministry. We're changing it to make sure people understand this is Jamaica's business ministry. That's what we do. The Trade Board has achieved an important goal over the past financial year. That's 22-23. The highlight of which is the assisting of at least 105 local manufacturers. I bet you didn't know that there were so many. 105 local manufacturers, exporters, and export-ready companies in getting their products qualified for export certification within the period April 1 to 2022 to March 31, 2023. Listen to me. You hear the word? Get their products qualified for export. You can't just pick up and run up and think that you're going to get your export. You see, before you used to have the bottles, the stopper that you throw off. Now you have to have it stick onto the bottle or you can't get your product in there. So there's, and the rules are always changing. People are environmentally sensitive. People want to know that you're not using child labor in making your products. You have to package your product well and make sure you label it very well. The Trade Board helps with that. The others of our agencies help with that, and we're here at the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce to help you to do that. I am cognizant that this mission was not easy for the Export Certification Unit at the Trade Board, particularly with regard to convincing their target audience to engage in export utilizing bilateral trade agreements and arrangements to which Jamaica is a party and which will ultimately contribute to Jamaica's GDP growth. Get them to convince to look at agreements. You can't even get them to talk about export. Before a couple months ago, and I made it as soon as I came to the ministry and I saw the trade numbers, I said, this has to change. Now, people might talk about export, but they're not talking about it enough, and they're certainly not checking enough as to what it takes to do export. It's not just easy. So when you see exporters get rich and people buy them stocks because they talk to their employees, is work. Serious work, Steve. No, sir? Serious work. At the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, Jamaica's business ministry, it is always a pleasure to be in a space and a part of conversations that revolve around growing businesses, increasing exports, and enabling economic growth. This seminar is a very important event, and one that reflects the significance of extensive information sharing, of bilateral trade information, and gaining the benefits of growing exports exponentially. We're not interested in growing exports. I am interested in growing exports exponentially. That means big. This is what that means. Okay? Big exports. But you know, as we look at what this seminar is about, and growing businesses and so on, we need to understand that we have to understand how Trinidad trades. You have to understand how Bahamas trades, how Curacao trades. But I want you to pick up something that Stephen said. He said, they told me, don't waste your time going to the Bahamas. It is, them not going to do it. Rubbish. Anybody did tell Mrs. Reed, my teacher, my primary school teacher, that one day I couldn't go to Monroe and Harvard Business School, she'd have said, rubbish. Mrs. Reed never believed in that. She'd take out her best student, prepare them for Hampton and Monroe and wherever else she send them, and make sure they go. We must not ask. In fact, whenever anything, I've always said, if they would just leave me alone, I'd become a scruff. The foolish people, them go challenge me. Yes, sir, Minister? Them shouldn't do that. Because all you do is you get my juices up, and that's when I focus. And when I focus, God bless you. Make sure you really want a war. So, you know, we need to get this argument out that we have to grow exports. I'm going to show you some things that I want to make you very uncomfortable with, so that you become like that oyster with a sand in them, and all you make is, over time, you make a wonderful pearl of the Caribbean. Of the Caribbean. As Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce, it's a pleasure to be in a space as part of this kind of conversation. We are fresh off Expo Jamaica, and I must acknowledge and commend the hard work of Jamaica manufacturers. Get my slides lined up. When I say slide, it must run. I'm not into any foolishness. I don't run that place. When I say first slide, I want it. Whoever is doing it. Mind you, I have no idea how to do it because there must be a division of labor. If I can do it, how that person gonna get the job? No, man. I do what I do. So, you know, I bring up Expo because I really want to commend and thank the Jamaica Manufacturers Exporters Association for putting on a really outstanding Expo 2023. Clap it. Now, something that you should really clap for is that for the first time, as I can recall, anybody could check, the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce took the position of being the driving lead sponsor for that. No minister did it before. Big. I watched them at the tennis matches in Rome and Monaco and so on, and when a good shot them. Tennis is the game I love, and football, and cricket, and everything else. But growing Jamaica's export is vitally important. I mean, absolutely vitally important. Here is why. Slide one. Here you go. When you look at that slide, Jamaica's real GDP, the numbers might be small, but I'll tell you. You see, the high point, let me tell you where the high point was. 1972. 1972. And from 1972 peak, all you can see is go down. That's our real GDP. Madness. And I'm going to bother you with that. I'm going to move to the next slide. And thank the person who's put this up. It's there very quickly. Very nice. Notice, no hitch. Not into hitches. We're the ministry, we're the business ministry. We flow. No hitch. Okay? So, the red one at the bottom is Jamaica. Flat, like me head forward. Not going anywhere. That is our per capita GDP. So, since it's far from you, I bring a table that I'm going to read. I'm telling you already how Cayman rich. So, we have up there actually Jamaica, Estonia, Singapore, Costa Rica. Estonia is in the purple one. Singapore is the one at the top in the gray line, way above everybody else. Singapore is one of the highest GDP in the world. They have 5 million people, 5.7 million people, and they were as poor as Haiti could never believe. I'm telling you. When Lee Kuan Yew took over, nothing was there. I mean, absolutely abject poverty. Them not have no iron ore. Them not have no gold. Them not have no platinum. None of those things. Them had some poor people and they weren't even well educated. Well, Lee Kuan Yew changed that. So Singapore is at the top there. Costa Rica is the yellow one. Israel is the dotted line. That's the second one from the top. That's how high their per capita GDP is. But let me bring it down to earth right now. I'm going to run down this. And I want you to be very upset when I finish. Because I want pearls made in Jamaica. Bahamas, and I'm using per capita GDP in constant 2015 US dollars. The economists will get it. Others, it no matter. Just follow the numbers. Bahamas is $26,705.60. That's the 2021 numbers. It's the latest numbers I have. St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, me sir, say both of them could hold easily in St. Elizabeth. Please. Oh, this is being streamed. No, I'm not making any comment at all about the geography of St. Kitts and Nevis. What I'm making a comment about is this, that they have a per capita GDP, listen to me carefully, 18,795. Barbados, 14,800. Antigua and Barbuda, 14,692. Trinidad and Tobago, 14,179. Guyana, 10,857. 2021 numbers. St. Lucia, 9,362. Dominican Republic, 8,410. Grenada, 8,223. St. Vincent and Grenadines, 7,926. Suriname, 7,008. Dominica, 6,964. Belize, 5,733. Jamaica, 4,971. The only country below us is Haiti at 1,283. Get upset. That cannot stand. That must not stand. We must change it. And it's people like us in here. Young, bright, some not so young. Some have money. Some make money. All of us. And you know how you're going to do that? Change your focus. Stop running up to supermarkets to buy foreign things. Go in there and say, where is my Jamaican stuff? Ask for it. Then you talk to your friends and say, oh, you have a business? You're making this? How much you export? And you don't shame them, but you ask them like 4 times. And by that time, they get shame. I tell you why. They don't have to get shame. Last year, I went to Christmas in July. It was at the Pegasus. And one of my first outing as minister at that time. And I went and I talk about export. Because soon after I came in January. By May, I got the first quarter results, or got the 2021 results, the trade balance, and I saw it. And I went to this thing in July, and I talked about export. And a week, 10 days later, lady WhatsApp me, because I give out my number everywhere. Nobody don't bother me. And if they don't bother me, nobody me answer it again. So I gave, they have my number. So she WhatsApped me and said, look, I'm in this business, tell me what it was. And I was thinking about export, but I never think about it much. But when you said we have to think about export, I went to Miami. I found a person who wants my product. And now I just sent off my first container. Container! Me say everybody can export. You know, see what France do? France take water. I don't know what kind of water it is. Snow water. Put it in a green bottle and put Perry on it, and you'd pay 5 times the value that God give you for free. 5 times, maybe more than that. And you never hear of Perrier and then say Evian, and you know what I mean? And charge you for the Evian. We can create things. They don't know about bananas when we turn up with free things. In other words, guys, we have to get creative, but we have to focus. Why do I say focus? As I told you, I play tennis. And I wanted to think, you know the names even if you don't watch a game. Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal. Now is different people. Iga Swiatek is running the women them nuts. And Alcaraz is king at the top. We'll see if he makes the French. But if you want to fix your forehand, the reason why they travel with a coach, they are the top of their game. And they're not, something is wrong. They're not taking the racket back early enough, or they're not hitting the ball in front of them, whatever, not keeping the eyes in. You have to, coach gets you in there and he focuses you. And they're out there 6-8 hours a day practicing. Sometimes it's just 2 shots. So that when they go, they can play for 4.5 hours, 5 sets, and win. We have to focus on exports. We have to focus everything we make. We say how we get it export. And not just think about yourself. Talk to your friends. Talk to the trade board. Talk to Janak. Talk to Jampro. Talk to JBDC. And we have productive incentive relief. I was looking at the numbers. We gave out 88 billion last year. 109 in 2021. We have money to help you as well, but you have to make a case. Productive incentive relief is to buy equipment and machinery and so on. The ministry will help you. Exim Bank will help you. Development Bank will help you. And you must use the agencies we have to focus on export. If you're doing anything, all coffins, you must try and export it. Anything. Because I promise you, anybody invite me to any debt yard to speak, they're going to hear about export. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to talk about export. I'll find a way. So, you see where the per capita GDP is? The reason why I'm telling you this about export, that cannot stand. We cannot stay at 4,000. You know something? I'm going to come to the end and show you what China did in a few years. Here's another reason why we can't stand. The next slide, please. This one really blew my mind. So last year was our 60th anniversary, independence anniversary. So when I looked at the 21 trade figures, which I told you about, well, I didn't tell you, we imported $5.975 billion US in 2021, goods and services. We exported a mere $1.441 billion US. The net gap, the trade balance, the negative trade balance was $4.534 billion US. That's a recipe to remain poor. So you know what? We did remain poor for all those years. For 60 years, I look at the trade figures. I asked the researchers, Mr. Hyatt and his group at the ministry, said, please give me the numbers for 61 years, because from 60 to 2021, 61 years. 62, sorry, to 2021. 61 years, whatever the number is. I went from 1960. So, you know what I found? There was one so-so year, one dega year, as we say in Jamaica, that we had a positive trade balance. You know when it was? Almi wasn't born yet, 1966. You know what I mean. So, I'm saying for you, the last time we had a positive trade balance is 1966. That cannot stand either. That must change. But you see the difference? You see how weird, you see the red mark? The red mark is just the deficit. The difference between the black one and the green one. The black one at the top is what we import. The green one is what we export. There is the deficit in red, but let me make it more dramatic. Give me the next slide. There it is. One solid gully going down. That's our negative trade balance. That is a testimony of poverty. Now, there's no correlation. I can't give you a correlation, but for 50 years, we meandered at a growth rate of 1% or less. And for 60 years, we had a negative trade balance. Now, I can't say one caused the other, but the correlation is really close. What I do know, the effect has been continuous poverty and not enough growth and not enough wealth for a country. That red mark must get above the numbers and get stronger if we're going to get rich, and is we have to do it. The next slide, please. This is the one I want to talk to you about. Bill Clinton in the late 90s engineered that the Chinese joined the World Trade Organization. One of the main things he did before he left. They joined actually in January 2001. Jamaica and India joined in January and March, respectively, of 1995. I have 3 countries up there. China is the red one. India is the blue one, dotted one, at the bottom. And Jamaica is the black one. That's, you see how flat our trade business is? Not going up, in fact, sliding if you don't watch out carefully. See what has happened to China? China had, if you notice, when you look at the per capita GDP for China and Jamaica, they were really, really below Jamaica, as you can see on that graph there. That shows the per capita GDP. Now, China passed us in 2009. Just 8 years. Why? And this, Dr. Blake, brings me to the reason why we're here. Clinton had organized for them to join the WTO. Some people don't necessarily agree with it, but there's nothing that you do in life that everybody's going to agree with. Some are going to agree, some will disagree. The point is, though, because of a trade agreement, China took that trade agreement, took on the world, and became the exporter of the world, and changed their country's GDP from way below Jamaica to way above Jamaica. The per capita GDP in which numbers? 2015 numbers was like $11,000 or $12,000. Jamaica is still 4,000 something around there. Because they grabbed the trade agreement, understood what it was, went around the world campaigning to get their trade. Listen to Stephen, the reason why I take trade delegations, because I make it very clear, I do believe you cannot stay in your office, nor can the minister stay in his office and go get business and think you're going to trade and get export. We have to go there. Take Stephen's advice and go to those trade shows, spend the money. Let me tell you, we took 73 people with us to Guyana, the second trade around. They all spend their money. And they come back and they're excited. They're out there spreading how you must go to Guyana and how Jamaicans must go. And I'm telling you, Guyana is a big part of the future of Jamaica. Rich country. So I'm saying to you, please, China did it. Now, what I'm encouraging you to do is make sure you understand this trade agreement. And Dr. Blake, I'm so happy you're going to do this because you're going to continue. You told me, I know you're your chairman, deputy chairman, must carry this message even as we go to the country with the MSMEs. But you have to have seminars. And you know what? You go out and look for ordinary little people who are not thinking of export. Bring them in. Bring them in with the buses. Give them the food. At least lunch. Coffee break is all right. Bulla if you can't afford bun. Okay, no, but seriously, we will do. We'll do better than Bulla. But we have to go, we have to become evangelists for this. They're not going to come into us. It's like going into a big bank. Them now go NCB and Scotia. It's threatening, and I used to run NCB. I know. We have to go to the waysides and the bylines. Oh, you know your Bible? You read it? Or you hear somebody say it? All right. Go to the highways and byways, mainly the byways in this instance, and bring them in, Dr. Blake. And get our people, if we're going to change what I show you up there. You know, I know Steve would give you pretty pictures. I want you to give the ones that must make you disturbed to change so that what Stephen is telling you about, you'll get on that train and plane and go do it. So I think I've given you enough to think about and to do something about. We have all kinds of a trade agreement. We have what they have here for me, Dr. Blake. We have United States, through the Caribbean Basin Initiative, Generalized System of Preferences, CARIFORUM EU Economic Partnership Agreement. They're here this week with Minister Johnson Smith. The CARIFORUM UK Economic Partnership Agreement, Canada, CARIBCAM, and with other English-speaking Caribbean states around Costa Rica, everybody. CARICOM has bilateral trade agreements with Cuba, Guatemala, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, and Venezuela. When you export to any of them? I went to Dominican Republic recently, took a trade mission. How many of you go? When are you going? We must study these many trade agreements to grow our exports exponentially. That means bigly. Sorry, big. You get my meaning. All right, I'm glad you got the drift. Okay? Increase good employment and make Jamaica a wealthy country. No apologies. We want Jamaica to become a wealthy country. We've been poor too long. We're too bright to let that happen. We're too good to let it happen. We must change it. The lack of information about the use and benefits of trade agreements will have to be fixed by the Trade Board and the other 19 agencies in this ministry, coupled with the apparent lack of interest and know-how among our manufacturers and exporters. Some do, but not all have to be changed. We're working to understand the reasons that impact exporters' ability to access or understand the information relating to market access requirements and how to meet them. The lack of knowledge of exporting under trade agreements, you have to understand and study them, negatively impact our business chances of benefiting from preferential treatment and successfully engage in shipping their products and produce from Jamaica to overseas markets. We must study them like any loan agreement. We get used to it. We must get out of, frankly, a little bit of laziness. We have to do the extra work, ladies and gentlemen. And it's probably going to be ladies who lead the gentlemen until them catch up. What you clap for? Uno men, uno can't clap. Anyway, all of us, men and women together, must work together to make this work for us. The Step Up Export with Trade Agreements initiative is a relevant and timely program that has placed the TBL in the right place to support the mission of export-led GDP growth. We have to do that. Manufacturers, exporters, and farmers, you are being afforded the opportunity to learn how to benefit from duty-free or duty-less shipments of locally manufactured products and services. This forum was designed especially for you. If we are to become a wealthy developed country, we must export to many more wealthy countries. Yes, Cayman, Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, United States. What's wrong with Israel? Take them on, because if you go to Israel, you have to be very good. So you know you're going to be very good. So we do it. We must export to many more wealthy countries. We cannot continue to trade only among our 3 million relatively poor people, and I gave you the numbers. So no one could quarrel with me. We're near the bottom. We must rise to the top. I'm not even interested in the middle. It's going to take time. It doesn't happen overnight, but we have to start now. Trade Board is doing it. JMEA is doing it. PSOJ is doing it. And the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, Jamaica's business ministry, is doing it as well. To the Export Certification Unit at the Trade Board Limited, I look forward to increased initiatives and engagements with exporters and potential exporters to step up export with trade agreements. Step up export with trade agreements. You, Dr. Blake, and your team have established programs that are designed to achieve the big, hairy, audacious goals pronounced from Harvard Business School as BHAG. So when you hear me BHAG, say BHAG, no, I have to tell you again, big, hairy, audacious goals, big ones, not small ones. And I implore all other agencies under the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce to take on the mantle and encourage, you're setting a good example, Dr. Blake, encourage manufacturers and creators of services to step up export. Thank you to the Trade Administrator, Dr. Blake. you and your team, the JMEA team, Mr. John Mafood, all of you guys, let us collaborate to grow our exports exponentially big and make Jamaica the wealthy country it must become. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. Minister, will you be staying for the question and answer segment?
Yeah, man, that's why I'm here.
Okay. Are there any question and answers from inside the room before we go to what's virtual? Well, because you see the minister, you get shy?
Stephen the questions.
All right, I'm going to go online. Follow up? Sure, of course you can. Mm-hmm.
I mean, this question is. This question. Yeah, this question is to the minister, really. I haven't been in the JMEA because while I was at the JEA, I was one of the lead on the JEA side to merge JMEA, right? Policy direction as government. What is that single element that you think would change the ball game in getting businesses and the populace generally to move exports? It's really a policy decision, I believe.
You know something?
It's on. It's on. It's on, Minister. It's on.
It's on. Can you hear me?
Try this.
No. I can hear. I don't hear any pop. This is on. It's interesting that most anytime we have something like this, we will start with the government. And the government sets the playing field. We say, hello? All right. We say that tax rates are this. You have to do these things to export. But I must tell you this, that governments tend to follow businesses. What we want are two things. I want businesses who haven't even thought of export. You think about, you've been in this business a long time. There's a time when Wisynco didn't export. Okay? They have to get there. We want now businesses that when they start on day one, think of export. We don't do that enough. We start and say, oh, we're going to compete with Grace and we're going to compete with this. I don't want to compete with Grace. I want you to compete with General Foods. I want you to get your stuff in the United States and sell it. Or whichever big market we want to go to, Trinidad, Guyana, Bahamas, wherever. We have to change the mindset of business people in Jamaica. And I mean big and small. Because you know, Steve, and many of my colleagues in here, you never thought of export for a long time. You're exceptional because you've been in that business. It has been your business. Okay? They invited you to Wisynco because of your export expertise. If they were to put up ads, they couldn't find 15 of you of that area from which to choose one. They never existed. We never talk about export. So while I'm going to come back to the government, because I know the government has a role to play, but I am so much from the private sector that I know I've been in the banking business in 9 different countries. The banks are always ahead of the regulators. We create products, and they come sometimes, they create some ones that cause FTX, cause some serious problems. But the regulators generally have to follow the marketplace. So the marketplace is why I'm out here, and I'm glad I'm from that place, to say it's you who must think about export. The government can't tell you, I can't tell you go think about export or come in and do your export. You must think about, you must say, this is I want to export to the UK. You know, I was at Jamper the other day, and they had me launch a new product that was going to be launched in the UK and Jamaica at the same time. And when I saw that packaging, my gosh, I was amazed. Young lady who grew up with her uncle or her father and started to export the products to the United States, to Britain, and it is fantastic. But the packaging that she had to go through and all that stuff, she had given it great thought. I don't think she was more than 29 or 32. But that's when you have to start thinking of export. That's the private sector side, because really, it's private sector who run business. And I keep telling everybody, I'm going to say it again, is you guys pay my salary, and the Prime Minister's, and the Minister of Finance. And when we play GCTs, because you pay us. So me no have no doubt about where the money comes from in Jamaica. That's why I'm out here with you, supporting you and making sure I enable you, because I want us to get rich, and it's only you can do it. No, government side. I asked for your presentation because I see you have some tax things up there. That means very often when those tax arrangements were being made, they weren't being made just like you didn't think of export. How much less did you think of the bureaucrats making these things think of export? Export was something you boondoggle, you tie up them foot and sign 60 forms before you can export. Why, when we want people to export, we make it so difficult? We have to change that mindset. So part of my job is to encourage you and then encourage inside my own shop. And, you know, it's funny, when you start explaining, people never thought about it. They never thought when they wrote this clause that it's going to stop export. Oh, it will just collect more money or something. We have to get changed from that mindset. So the government has to be the enabler. So you notice I have 3 objectives in the ministry. Big ones. There's some subsidiary ones. But they're all linked. The first one, grow export exponentially. You notice I don't say manufacture first. As I told you, Perrier water was manufactured by anybody. Them just bottle it nicely. The next one is you must get investments. Usually we talk about foreign direct investment. We love foreign loans, we love foreign direct investment, we love that, yes. But there's a lot. I had a meeting with William, and I won't name the other gentleman now, another big businessman, 6 months ago at the British High Commission, and they said that they're investing billions of dollars in Jamaica. And you know, I came to the plant. You see, the money is investing. And the reason why they're doing that, they haven't seen Jamaica like this for 30 years. Jamaica is growing. Jamaica, people are coming to Jamaica. Jamaica is positive. Do we have problems? Of course. Them don't have problems in the United States. Them not rich. All Singapore, where you can't spit on the street, them have problems too. So everybody's going to have, we have to work out our own. One way to do it is A, to make sure we invest and export. The second one, rather the third one, is we have to train our people. Our workforce has become small. Small, in fact, that our employment is now higher than it used to be. That's why it has become small. But we have 300,000-400,000 people out there, young people, mainly young men, who we now have to bring in through heart and through working with the JDF, whoever they work with, for discipline, for training. They all must have a skill. Skill, and everyone must have certified again up over there foreign, so they can work in Jamaica, Saudi Arabia, United States, anywhere, preferably in Jamaica. So what are we doing? Let me tell you, unless you have endless natural resources, and I mean in this instance primarily oil, like Qatar, United States, United Emirates, really Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia or Kuwait, unless you are endowed with that kind of oil, or now Guyana, you have, if you don't have those, the only thing you have is you have to educate your people. That's what Singapore did. That's what Israel did. That's what Estonia did. No, if you are like Singapore and so on, you educate your people, we have to follow that and make sure we educate our people so that you get the people you want. Now, if you're blessed to have endless resources like the United States and you educate your people, you become the richest country in the world. I just want to be wealthy for Jamaica. So we have to make sure that we work together. We look at those taxes. There's not just one thing. If there's just one thing, is the mindset. On both the government side and the private sector side. That's what I want to change.
Are there any more questions?
Morning, everyone. My question is to Senator Hill. I'm good.
Who are you?
I'm Keena Thomas.
From which entity?
Seraph Pro. That's my business. But my question is, should or must the Chinese one overtake the US dollar as the world trading currency? What do you foresee as an impact on Jamaica's export?
There are two sides to that argument. Let me tell you something that really actually did happen. If you go back and Google King Faisal bin Abdulaziz bin Saud of Saudi Arabia, in the early 70s, if I recall from the history reading, he decided that something upset him about the United States. The Middle East and the United States, they're close and upsetting each other. So King Faisal did not want to use the US dollar, so he declared that he would have all the oil invoices and LCs denominated in Deutschmark. Well, let me tell you what happened. That happened. What King Faisal did was make sure Deutsche Bank and Commerzbank, those were the two big German banks at the time, made a lot of money. You know what? What actually did happen though? When they cashed the LC in Deutschmark, it stayed in Germany for about 1 nanosecond. Because in the next second, it was in New York. Because the German banks and the German economy couldn't carry the weight of that economy, of those exchanges. So anybody who understands trade, yes, there might be some of that. But let me tell you, I'm not going to answer which it will be. I'm going to let you answer it. Here's how you do it. Precipitate a crisis. Preferably one like coronavirus and a war put together. Big war, though, not just one side of the world. And then you look at where the Chinese, who can, the Saudis, who will, the Russians, who can, the British, who can and probably will, the German, who will, see where they put their money in a crisis. No. Where they put their money in a crisis is not so much important as where they can take their money from in a crisis. So anywhere that you see people who are wealthy and are investors put their money in a crisis, that is the reserve currency. No matter what anybody else tell you, because people put their money where they feel it's safe and them can take it from. So when you see, trade agreements might happen, and I might decide to denominate my currency. If I'm buying a lot of Leland trucks from India and they do make good Leland trucks, I might agree to open an LC in rupees. But in a crisis, when I make the money on the trucks, and a crisis coming, probably people will want it in a capital. Delhi is fine, but other countries, Can you get it out? That's the test. So, you know, one lady over there used to tell me that she read the Bible. So I read mine too. You remember when the Jews want to catch Jesus with a trick question? And say, hey, you out here preach every day. Because them have no respect for Jesus. These are now the Pharisees and the scribes and the priests and all them. Because Jesus called them hypocrite every day. So him say, you, hey you, should we pay taxes to Caesar? Total trick question. If Jesus say yes, he says, see you call us hypocrite every day. You're the worst hypocrite ever. You're not no Jew. How you want us to pay taxes to these evil Romans? That's one side. If him say, don't do that, him say, oh yes, we're going right over to Pilate now. Pilate, seem there? Seditionist. Him not even a good Jew. Take him. Him's against Caesar. Can't win. So Jesus said, oh yes, can't. This is Apple. Jesus said, oh yes, give me the money. Let me see it. So they bring him a denarii. So who picture this? Caesar. Give to Caesar what is Caesar. Give to God what is God. That's the spiritual lesson. The geopolitical lesson is this. If you're going to be an empire that has the reserve currency, you better have a big army in Caesarea, in Israel, to back it up and around the world. So also, not only can you, where you will put your money, where you will take it out from, but where your money is secured by easily the strongest military. So I don't have to answer the question. You make the decision when you have all that money you're making from your private sector business. When you decide now that there's a crisis, where am I going to put it? You tell me where you're going to put it. That's the reserve currency. Get your answer? All right.
Okay, thank you, Minister. Okay, time is against us, so we're going to try and proceed very quickly. No, we're not driving you quite out yet, Minister. So I have a question, which, Minister, since you're so au fait with banking, perhaps it was geared towards you. From YouTube, from Brother Son on YouTube, he asks, or she asks, how will the changing world economy that is shifting away from fiat currency, backed by credit and nothing else, have an effect on our country?
It's largely a similar question. They're saying fiat currency because it's not backed by gold. But you know, it's interesting what has happened. The geopolitics, because Russia's currency is supported by, you know, gold, platinum, coal, oil, and oil, you know, gas. The Chinese economy doesn't have the same kind of mineral support. And you remember the graph I showed you? Before 2000, up to 2009, Jamaica's per capita GDP was higher than China. You know how China changed that? By trading. Who are China's two biggest trading partners? The United States and EU. People also ask me about, what about if China pull out their debt from the United States? They buy U.S. treasuries. Suppose they pull out 1.3 trillion or whatever that figure is, anywhere between 850 billion and 1.3 trillion, depending on the year or date. Which economy can carry that? You remember what I told you about King Faisal and Germany? Which economy can carry that? Okay? And the openness of the economy, that you can send, I say, sit on my phone and make a transfer from my bank in the UK or the United States or Switzerland, wherever you have your money. How are you going to do that in a controlled, state-driven economy? Those are questions people will have to answer. Now, there will be solutions. People will be working them out. But you have to remember what investors look for. I want safety for my money. More importantly, when I'm selling Jamaica, I said, look, we have a free exchange currency. You bring clean money in, you take out clean money. There are countries in the Caribbean where you can't do that. That's a big plus for Jamaica. when we move to that. So being able to take out your money is of more important than where you put it. So there you go. What's the name of the person? Brother son or sister son? I saw it go.
Are there any more questions?
Good afternoon. My name is Shelley Ann Brown from the National Certification Body of Jamaica. One follow-up question for Mr. Dawkins. You spoke of the success journey and you mentioned the other elements, but in terms of certification, how did that assist in opening up markets for Wisynco?
It's absolutely critical. I mean, going back to, let me say which country now. The CARICOM region. I mean, there are markets that I would not have been in if I wasn't certified. I don't know if you understand the OECS markets too, in which it's a split off of CARICOM and so on. You have to have certain critical elements in order to get your products there. So it is absolutely necessary. And as I said in my presentation before, what I've seen in the last few years is significant to the growth of exports. Significant. And I don't know if there's a correlation, but I think there is, because when I started at Wisynco, what I am now doing, what we were doing in a year, I'm now doing it in a couple of weeks. You understand? That is the growth of the business. So everything intertwines in terms of how the bodies, the government bodies, helping us to get there. And, so that's the best way to answer that question. I mean, Trinidad gave us a hard time, but it has been different now, yeah. Yes.
When I went there, the trade mission, they were very hospitable.
All right, I'll take another question from the YouTube channel. Akeem Braham, he asks, for farmers that are registered or have registered farms and want to export their produce directly to an overseas market, what are the procedures to do so? What I would recommend, Akeem, is that you get in touch with the Trade Board. The number is 967-0507 and ask for the Export Certification Unit and they will assist.
Give the number again.
967-0507.
Do you have an email?
We do. We have several. I'll give you the one for the director, which is J. Butler, JBUTLER @tradeboard.gov.jm. The portal, right, which we're going to sing. I've been informed that today is actually our portal's birthday, Dr. Minister.
Yes.
We want to wish JTIP a happy 4th birthday, Carl?
Yes.
4th birthday for JTIP.
How do they get to the portal?
They get to the portal by...
Jamaica Trade Information Portal.gov.jm.
So that's Jamaica Trade Information Portal.gov.jm. Jamaica Trade Information Portal.gov.jm.
Great.
Are there any more questions before we come down to an end? Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. So whilst the Minister is leaving, just before we come to an official close, I would just like to say, based on what the Minister has said, the takeaway I have gotten, which I'd like to share with you, broken down into the mindset. Not many entities are as big as Wisynco, and so we want to ensure that we're not only catering to companies who feel they don't have resources, but you may have not as many resources right now to invest as Wisynco can, to say don't be deterred, but there are things that you could do that you can take away from the model that has been described by Stephen. I think all of it goes to the mindset, as the Minister said. All right, let me just wait for the photo up.
Yes. Thank you.
session. One person leading, please.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
So awkward to do this. Which of the markets here?
Okay.
31. 31 countries? You told them that?
Hiring. Hiring my position.
He said he wants job. He has jobs to offer.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, so before we come to an official close and we hand over to Miss Ashpole to do the closing, I would just like to say that some of you, because I know that we have exporters who are not as large as Awisinko, and they may be daunted by what Stephen has said, but there's a takeaway that I got from it, which feeds into what the minister said, which is mindset. One of the things that Stephen mentioned, which you don't have to have money to do, or a lot of money to do, is invest in your brand. I don't know how many of you read the news yesterday and you saw a company, Mecca Moves, a shoemaker guy, that he makes shoes for Capleton. And by chance, he happened to be at the expo. And he can no longer fulfill orders. And so it's just investing by being at the expo, which didn't cost as much as Awisinko's resources. That helped. Another takeaway I got from Stephen as well, where there are limited resources, is the drive. He was told not to go into the Bahamas, but he went. And so don't give up. If you have a drive, if this is something that you want to do beyond the limitations, you can go. What we've learned from the minister is get creative. So these are not things that require heavy-duty resources. So don't be daunted by the resources that Awisinko may have, and you can compare yourself. As he said, it took time to grow, and we do have small MSMEs who are listening in. So the lesson, really, the takeaway, I know when I started, I said one dege things, but we've grown to about 3 or 4 more now to say that take all of this in hold, to know that no matter how small you are, you can still become an exporter. Awesome. And so I'll invite Ms. Ashpole now to give her closing.
Dr. Don, Dr. Blake, presenters, and my distinguished guest, both in the room and online, it is a privilege to have been asked to deliver the vote of thanks for this event for 2 reasons, because this is my area of interest, international trade, and also because as a board member of the Trade Board Limited, I am happy that we're here and reestablishing our position of being a premier trading entity of the government. I'd like to thank all the persons who contributed to this event. I'd like to thank the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce and all our representatives here today. I saw Clifford from the MSME division just a while ago, and I believe we have another representative from the MSME division. I'd like to thank Senator the Honorable Aubin Hill for this mandate that he has delivered to all of us, and that we've taken very, very seriously to increase export and to step up export with trade agreements. As was said in, I believe, Carl's presentation and also Dr. Blake's presentation, we have had these trade agreements for quite some time and they have been underutilized. And it is our duty as a Trade Board Limited to ensure that you know about them, that you know that the Trade Board Limited is a place that you can come and get the information that you need. I'd also like to thank the JMEA for the partnership. They have been very strident in assisting both the ministry and the TBL in executing our vision. And anytime we call on the JMEA, they're always present to contribute. I'd like to thank our listeners online and in the room, all distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I know there are other things you could have been doing with your time, but you're here with us and you've stayed the course. Thank you for your questions and thank you for your insights. I'm now officially closing this event.
Thank you.